Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game, the podcast where I, your host, Connor McCabe, bring on a guest to hear from them about a meaningful or memorable video game from a particular moment in their life. This is a podcast about what makes video games special to different people, and a little bit of housekeeping up top is that if my guest today or I plug anything on the show, and listener, we gosh dang will be plugging stuff, and you want to find where that stuff is, if you scroll down wherever you're listening, whether you're on the Apple Podcast app or watching these two handsome fellows on YouTube, then scroll down in the episode description. There's going to be links to whatever we have, whether it's a Patreon for more bonus video game podcasts from me and the makers of this show, or another podcast out there, social media. It's going to be in the show notes. Without further ado, I also want to say before I introduce my guest that I didn't tell him this before, but this is actually the 250th episode of the Call Me By Your Game podcast. It would be nice if I had planned this to have, one of our most special guests return for his second solo episode, for this, gorgeous 250, a beautiful number. But it was more of just happenstance, and just worked out that one of my favorite people to talk video games with is coming back for this one. So before we talk a little bit more about that, I got to introduce him. Please welcome to the microphone, what? Almost screwed that up. Pro wrestler Mike Steele.
Wow, thanks, Connor. You know what you could have left out? The part where you specifically say that there's nothing special about my appearance. You could have just let people's minds wander. That story could have just started unfolding in their brains, but I like that you were like, yeah, I need to make sure that people know for a fact nothing special.
I need people to know that I didn't try hard at all to get this guest for this special episode.
No. I did look it up. I am the Ho-Oh of episodes, because Ho-Oh is number 250. I just wanted to make that clear.
I love that. And then is Celebi 251?
Yeah, I believe so.
I think so. Because when I said 250, I was like, why is that number great?
Or would Celebi 252, would Lugia be 251? I don't remember. I think, actually, yeah, because of Mew, it would be an offset number. Let's not look it up.
Let's never look it up.
And just assume that Celebi is actually 252, and that Lugia is 251, and that your boy right here, 250, Connor.
Beautiful.
I have a story for you.
Do you already?
I had a dream about you and the show last night.
Oh, now that's what we call an anticipation fever dream. Go ahead.
So, it feels prophetic.
Oh my goodness.
So in the dream, the part that I remember it starting was like we're wrapping it up, and it's the part where you're like, all right, so if you could just email me your audio, I'd really appreciate it. We had a great time, blah, blah, blah. And then we just kind of shoot the shit. And you were like, yeah, go ahead and send it to me. Our new editing process is really fast. As soon as I get it, the show's just going to go straight up. And I was like, oh, wow, that's fast. And you were like, so I emailed it to you, and you're like, Mike, it's already up. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. And I went, and you were like, oh my God, there's also already a comment. And I'm like, whoa, a comment from who? And we went and we looked at the comment, and it was from someone named Jessica. And all it said is, ugh, this try-hard know-it-all's back. Boo. Unsubscribe. And I was like, whoa, shit, my insecurity is laid bare for the world, and then I was like, wait a second, Jessica, who is this Jessica person? So I started digging, doing some internet sleuthing, and so I end up doxing Jessica and find out, by the way, Connor, you and I, we're juniors in high school in this dream.
Oh, okay.
She's the girl I'm going to prom with, and I'm like, oh my God, why would the girl that I'm going to prom with drop a mean comment like that on a video of me on YouTube? And Connor, you figured it out before I did, and you're like, Mike, I think you might be Never Been Kissed. And I was like, oh shit, I think I'm Never Been Kissed. And
yes.
She's gonna show up and like pop out of the roof of the limo, and I'm gonna be like standing there like all happy and shit, and then her and her friends are gonna throw eggs at me. And so,
oh my gosh.
So preparing for that, I walk out. I'm standing on my porch, so time passes. And
also, I can't believe that this dream is continuing.
It continues, Connor. It keeps going. So then I'm standing on my porch, and she pops out of the rooftop, paintball gun, goes to unload on me, pop out an umbrella, and I block it. And then I was like, go to hell, Jessica. And then I ended up texting you, and I'm like, Connor, it was totally a never been kissed. And you're like, I told you, Mike, I told you. And I was like, thank you, Connor. And then I'm sure there was more, but that's the part that I remember. And that's the part that matters.
There is so much to unpack about this dream. First of all, I'm honored to have appeared in your dream. That is special.
As a key role, you were an important part.
Truly. This also, I feel like, is giving me some insight into you. You must be a regular dreamer.
Oh, yes. I have very vivid and memorable meaning I remember them, not just like they disappear, but vivid and memorable dreams.
Yeah, I've always sort of had the same thing. I was just telling you how I was out of town for a week, and for whatever reason, I don't think this always happens in sleeping in a bed that's not my own, but staying in this hotel bed, I was dreaming vividly every night. Oh. And I don't know what that's about, but I'm glad to have another, I might even call you a radical dreamer on the episode.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Mike, that is so prophetic. Let's hope that, oh, by the way, our new editing process is, we cut Jeremy out of the equation. It's just AI. I've actually
just go straight up.
I've embraced heavy AI in the show. I'm actually AI right now, if you didn't know.
You know what? I thought your mustache looked happenstance and thrown together.
Yes, definitely. It didn't quite. It's when it scanned the thousands of videos of me that there are on the internet. It just totally screwed that up.
And you've got 6 fingers, and
yes,
your haircut's like 3 haircuts.
Yeah, kind of an improvement in some ways. Mike, dude, I'm so glad to have you on the show. You are, people will know you. These Call Me By Your Game fans, they're ravenous. They'll know you to have a long history of appearances on this show. You've been on countless co-op episodes because I'm often throwing up your bat signal when I have a weird game I need another person.
I get a text from you whenever you're doing an episode on a game no one has ever played, and you're like, shit, I need someone other than just me, and sometimes just other than you, but other than you and one person, and in one case, Jeremy Schmidt and one person to have played a game. And I like that, actually. Maybe that's where my dream insecurities come from. Maybe that's why my subconscious is telling me that I'm like a try-hard know-it-all, is that I only show up on either things I adore, so I talk too much, or obscure things, so I'm like worried that I'm like hipster game guy.
Yes, we're figuring out the chemical imbalance that is going on in your head at all times.
I've got friends that are like, that BPD, that's nothing compared to what I have. Insecurities about my video game tastes.
Like I was saying, people know that you've been on a million of those. But also, I will say, you're about to be appearing on 2 upcoming co-ops. One which actually, these are but one game you are passionate about, which is Donut County. You're going to be on this episode, and this is how I commit to it hard as I say it live on mic.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're going to be on that episode for the month of June, as we're hurtling towards July. And then our Uncharted 2 crew is reuniting for July, where we're going to be discussing Bastion. That was one where I had already had Courtney on it because Courtney does a voice in the game.
Of course.
And then I was like, well, let's just see if I can get that crew back together from our Uncharted 2 episode, which was so much fun. And both you and Oscar could do it, so we'll be seeing you soon.
Hell yeah, that's a good group right there. That's a good group of people.
It's great. All 3 of you are just so fun to talk about games with, so that'll be fun. But you've been on.
Connor.
Yes.
Connor, I'm sorry. Hold on. My mom just sent me a text.
Oh, please.
She says, tell Connor to have a nice show.
Did she actually say that?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So.
Should I call her? What should I call your mom?
Oh, my mom's name is Marcy.
Marcy, thank you from the bottom of my heart. That is so kind.
I will play this for her later, or I'll forget, and she'll never hear what you said.
That's very sweet of her. And I was so worried that it was going to be some awful emergency text, and I'm so glad it was just tell Connor to have a good show.
Tell Connor I hate him.
Yeah, I feel well, expected that. That's my insecurities coming out. Is Mike's mom hating me? You first appeared. We've gone over this before, but I gotta say it because we're here. I know you through our mutual friend. I almost said Jake Steele. Jake Sprague. That should be his last name. Jake Sprague, who I've known through the Los Angeles improv scene for almost a decade at this point. and you guys grew up together. He connected us. In fact, on his first appearance ever on the show, on the way to, I think he even references you on his first episode. Do you remember this?
He texted me a bunch beforehand asking me some questions like, hey, do you remember any fun stories? Hey, what were some things that felt significant about when we were playing? And he was like, I wanted to make sure I didn't forget anything. And so, my boy Yeehaw Jake hit me up, and I filled in as much as I could.
You did great. And because he showed up on the episode and just brought you up so much. And then I think through the next year, because that was late 2019 when him and I did this episode, into 2020, I don't know if you had you maybe had listened to the show, but I would see you guys do Twitch streams together.
Yeah, I would listen regularly because I liked the show. I was like, oh, this is because Jake told me he's going to be on it, so I checked it out, and I was like, oh, this is good. And then I got it in my head that I'm like, I'm going to pester this Connor guy.
Yes.
I'm going to become a part of his life, and then I'm going to be on this show. I'm going to be his friend, and I'm going to be on the show. And, I mean, here I am. Connor, if that's not a success, I don't know what is.
It really is, and I've also made you come to regret your decision by just asking you on, too many shows every year. But yeah, so that's what was happening. Yes, I think we probably followed each other on social media. This is really important to go through our whole history.
It's very, very important.
We followed each other. I would see you guys do streams together, whether you'd be playing games or I remember one time I think you were playing a co-op game and you guys were discussing what was wrong with Rise of Skywalker on Twitch.
Okay. Was that like a 12-hour stream? Because that movie's a goddamn disaster.
It probably was. And anyway, we had eventually connected enough to where at some point I DM'd you and invited you on the show. Your first appearance was on episode 67. This was in the late winter, spring of 2021, where you discussed, of course, Final Fantasy VI as we know it now, Final Fantasy III in the States originally, which we kind of hinted at it already. An all-time record length for a podcast on this show, which I believe it's like 2 hours and 37 minutes or something like that.
Do you know what the closest one to that is?
I don't think we've ever gone over 2 hours with another single guest. Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, of course. But hey, you know what? At least this one's starting nice and to the point. We're getting things right.
I'm not off into the weeds already.
Yeah, rubber hitting the road.
Yes. So we'll threaten that record. But we've had, of course, co-op episodes go regularly around 2 hours. But you basically more than doubled the length of a typical episode on this show. And the record still stands to this day, Mike.
I love talking about things that I love. And so that was a really easy. I think I remember even in the episode, I was like, I mean, we could talk some more about Kefka. I feel like we really haven't talked much about Kefka. And this is like at the very end. It's like the last 10 minutes. And I remember that there was like and this is not a judgment towards you, but there's a look in your eye that was like, oh no, is he joking? And so I was like, yeah, it's a joke.
Are we about to just veer off into another tangent at the 2 hour and 30 minute mark? Well, to be fair your passion is one of the reasons I love to discuss video games with you, because you are not only do you have a lot of it, but you're very good at articulating that. And so anytime you come on a show and you're always concerned, like, oh my gosh, did I share too much about a game I'm passionate about? The answer is no. It's always helpful and makes the show better, whether it's just us or a group of people. So there's that, but also Final Fantasy VI is a game we could have done you and Jake could have done a 12-hour stream discussing every detail about
probably, the game.
Yeah. So it was meant to be, Mike, that you set that record those many moons ago in our first ever real discussion.
Yeah.
That's the crazy.
I felt like I knew you already, Connor.
Yes.
I felt like we were already, like I said, we've been best friends basically for 4 years. I'm really excited for you to get married because it's going to be tough. There's got a lot of people that could be your best man. Yeah. And I know that they're all going to be so disappointed when I get the text.
Yes. I'm absolutely not disappointing Marcy's son. I tell you what. No, absolutely not.
Yeah. You hear that, Jessica? People like me.
So that, we've had a nice excuse of me hosting the show and getting to catch up with you, almost, I would say we text, if we don't text every month, it's probably every couple months that we're keeping in touch.
Well, and it's more because like I don't, and I think I've brought this up on the show. I don't want to bug you. Like I'm always like afraid that like I'm gonna be a bother because you, unsurprisingly, my text messages are exactly how I talk. Where it's like Connor will be like, "Hey, Mike, have you ever played Mass Effect?" And then a fucking novel reply later. It's like, "Cool, thanks."
Yeah.
And I know it's hard. It's hard not to like talk that way. So I'm always like insecure, but I'm always excited when you will often chime in and go like, "Hey, been playing anything?" Or "Hey, Mike, guess what I've been playing?" I'm like, "Ooh, what is it, Connor?"
It's a blast. So Mike, you don't bug me though. Text me anytime.
All right.
And I'm excited to have more reasons to just keep in touch in the future. The last thing I'll say too before we hop in and I give you a little more chance to plug anything you want or share more about yourself if you feel like it, is that you've also been featured on our top 10 series where I brought back past guests to list by force their top 10 favorite video games of all time. That's one of my favorite ones, and in fact it's the example I usually send to people who are coming on for a top 10. Is I share it's the episode with you, Kristen, and Jake. I think it was like maybe the third or fourth one of those that I
Uh-huh.
did, and oh, just the chemistry of the three of you
You can tell we
together.
knew each other. Like you can tell
Yes.
it's very obvious that you brought on like three people that were friends for an extended period of time long before they ever sat down and did a show with you.
Yes.
Because we are acting like we're just a bunch of like idiots in our living room and Connor happens to be there.
100%. It was truly exactly what I had hoped for when I got the three of you together. And I'm on those top 10 episodes, I try to curate a group that I think is at least going to get along well together. Sometimes that is a group of friends or a group of people who have stuff in common. And you three is just like the my idealized version of that, for sure.
Yeah, that
Um,
was fun. That was very, very fun. People who haven't listened to that should go and listen to that.
Yeah, I bet if you search Mike's name in the podcast's feed, you'll be able to find it. I don't have the episode number handy, but it's great. From I believe like October 2023 is when we did that. But Mike, uh, I've talked enough about our freaking connections here, pal. What do you want to plug? What do you want to tell the listener about yourself that we haven't already shared?
My name's Mike Steele. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada. Currently, I used to say that I worked on games. Now I am technically considered a freelance gaming contractor because games are a nightmare scape that with a never-ending like foundation of sand that refuses to stay put. So either you die, you run away screaming, or I guess like you're maimed and just try and push through. I think I'm in the maimed and pushing through
Yes.
category right now because layoffs have just been just absolutely insane, just brutal in the gaming industry. Anyone who follows gaming news is probably already aware of that, but it is a absolute just bloodbath 24/7 in games. And I got laid off from the studio I had been working at almost a year ago to the day because I remember last year because I run a convention. I run a video game convention here in Las Vegas called Level Up Expo. If you're within the Nevada surrounding states, check us out. It's a pretty good convention. I think you'll like it. We're getting big. But I remember I did that convention exhausted. It's a lot of work, but it's like satisfying stuff. But like I'm always like just dead afterwards. So I go to work the next day. We've got meetings with the VP, setting Zoom for the entire company for like an hour after people clock in, and I'm like, all right. So either this is everybody's getting the best news
Yes.
because or everybody's getting laid off. There's no in between when you see a meeting scheduled like that. And unsurprisingly, because of the state of video games, I was not optimistic that it would be the good version.
Yeah.
And sure enough, everybody but three people in my studio got laid off, and everybody in like I mean, so I'm talking about actual office. So, but
Yeah.
like the company I worked for within Take Two, I think all but like eight people got laid off. So it was
Goodness.
and there was like 70 or so people, and we were all just like, just gone. And that was a bummer. And so now I've just been doing contract work I don't believe any of the games that I'm working on are announced. Hey, one of them got canceled recently. It was that EA Black Panther
Hey.
game. So,
Oh no, Mike, I'm so
no,
sorry.
it's okay, dude. I was working with some of the guys that worked for Monolith that made the Shadows of Mordor and
No.
more. It was those guys. Those guys went and
Yes.
made Cliff Diver, and then were working on that game. So so I say it like it's a bummer that it got like canned. Lots of games get delayed, canceled all the time. It's like it's hard to even be disappointed by that anymore. To me, it was more that I got to work with a bunch of people I admire for several months in a
Yeah.
really cool way.
Cool.
And technically, I think during Summer Games Fest, that Lego Mario Party game,
Yeah.
I don't know what official name they gave it.
It
And
might be
then
Lego
that
Party.
it probably is because that makes sense. I was working on that for 2 years
Okay.
before it moved studios because that was one of my studios games. It's a pretty good Mario Party clone for what
All
it's worth.
right.
So if and when that game comes out, that had the Mike Steele touch on it. I doubt I'll be in the credits because usually when studios shut down, they just throw those lists out the window.
Yeah.
They're gone forever. And then the new Game Freak game that got announced.
That's right.
I don't know what name they've given that either, because again, that had a code name when I was working on it. But I worked on that for about a year and a half. Very cool game in its conception. I don't know. I worked on a very, very early game, so I
Yeah.
cannot speak to what that game is going to look like when it comes out. But visually, it looked really cool. It's got a ton of fun ideas. A couple like I guess you could say technology style wow moments of like, oh wow, they're doing this kind of
Yeah.
thing. It's a cool game. I hope that it works out because I know the Game Freak guys have been trying to make something other than Pokemon for a long time, but it's hard because of the size of their studio and the grind that they have to be on to put out Pokemon games always made that difficult. And I guess Drill Dozer is probably the closest to a game that they've made that ever even came close to landing.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty small Game Boy Advance game. So I'm optimistic that this is a cool direction that people could get behind.
Yeah. I have
So
the
I work.
title, by the way.
Oh, what is it?
Beast of Reincarnation.
That makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
So there you go. Those are two games I worked on a while ago that have now moved on since my studio got closed
Yes.
down that I can vouch for as at one point in time being cool.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I was listening to, do you listen to the Min-Max show ever?
I don't listen to lots of podcasts. I'm bad. I'm on them, but I don't listen to
You're
them.
all good. It's a bunch of a few former Game Informer people from like
Yeah. Oh, I'm
before.
familiar. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I was listening to that show last week, and when they were doing a little Summer Games Fest wrap up, they were talking about this game since it was shown, and the Ben Hansen name dropped your former studio and was like, oh yeah, before like everything at this studio went to hell or whatever. And I was like, wait a second, Game Freak, Mike mentioned this before. And so as I was running along the beach of Hawaii, Mike, I thought about you.
That's where I want people to think about me.
Yeah, as they're just running sweaty and the sun is rising. That's cool, Mike. Yeah, so someone out there hire Mike. And Mike, if you want to be specific, what
Oh
should
no,
people hire you
I'm not.
for?
I swear, I'm not out here searching for stuff like that. I have bunny hopped contract job
Hmm.
to contract job for now. I'll try and do that for a while. I mean, again, games are hard to be in right now. They're a
Yeah,
difficult place to be. If anything, if people want to get into games, this is probably a very realistic picture of what it's like.
yeah.
When I was coming on before, being like, I'm working on this and I'm at the stable show, like that is not common, no matter
Hmm.
how big your studio is. I mean, Microsoft's laid off more game employees than anybody in the last 3 years, and
Hmm.
you would assume that they'd be as stable as possible. Um, Tiny studios, big studios, it doesn't matter where you're at. It's just kind of the nature of, without getting too like capitalism is evil, high horse guy, like games are in a spot where until people realize that they can't just be wrung out like for all they're worth and that people can't just be like treated like fuel, which right now that's kind of what games are. They kind of have to burn down and kind of come back up for people to realize that. And it's going to happen. But right now it's like everyone's waiting for the last possible second because shareholders are expecting blank percent. And if you can't get blank percent, you got to lay people off or do crazy things to get that. And at some point in time, that number will be impossible. And it will be impossible enough times in a row that everybody goes, okay, we can't keep doing this.
That's
And that's what games are right now. And
yeah.
so if you're looking to get into games, like understand that that like regardless of your trade, that is the industry you're getting into, and there's plenty of amazing things and amazing people, but it is not an industry with a stable foundation. And if you can find that, that is like one of the greatest things in the world, because you kind of get to like have your cake and eat it too. And so like just know what you're getting into, but know that it's infinitely satisfying if you can find a large or small role out there making games in any capacity.
Yeah, it's so it'll be I wonder what does that say about me, Mike, that I'm in one industry that's also tumultuous and going through absolute hell in the in Hollywood over here as a writer and an actor, and also I'm working on a game that maybe I'd be like, maybe working in games would be fun. So going from one disaster to another, who knows?
What I'm saying, Connor, is you need to learn how to be an HVAC, AC guy,
Yeah.
uh, learn AC HVAC, and then never look back.
Truly. Now that's a rhyme, if we've ever heard one. So that's a little bit about you, Mike. Do you want to plug anything before we get into some more video game stuff?
I did mention my convention. It's gotten very, very large. And so now it's like, it feels like it's worth bringing up to people, because it used to be like, if you happen to live in Las Vegas, but now it's like, we've been running through, like, we've got like people that do demographic stuff for us. Like, that's how big we've gotten.
Wow.
We get a lot of visitors from both coasts as well as all the states surrounding. So if you're a state that is anywhere near Nevada and you want to go to a cool, video game centric but not entirely focused fandom convention, it is called Level Up Expo. I started it with my friends. It's really cool. We've gotten lots of great feedback. I, as a person who works on games, get to flex my real life game design skills. I have an event there called Side Quest, where you get to basically be an adventurer and take quests from NPCs and level up a character and win magic items for your inventory. It's very, very fun. I designed it,
Wow.
and it's a great time. It's kind of what I do now. Obviously, off season, I manage all sorts of things, but on site during the convention, it's gotten so popular and big that that's kind of what I do now. So that's very fun. But if any of those things sound like something, if you're a cosplayer, if you're a game developer, if you are a person that just enjoys conventions, meeting voice actors, live pro wrestling, video game tournaments, all sorts of things, Level Up Expo might be something that you're interested in. I'm also on a radio show. We just celebrated our 18-year anniversary
Dude.
last month by doing what we call a streamathon. It's where we just every time someone gives us $100, we add an hour to how long we're going to
Oh my
stream.
God.
Eventually, we had to cut it off. I think we got to like 34 hours, and we're like, never mind, this is a bad
Yeah.
idea. But that was how we celebrated our anniversary. But we've had a weird influx of new listeners because Hollywood washed up actor Corey Feldman has started a war with us. He
Yes.
hates our guts. And so we love him, but he hates us. So that's become this weird dichotomy.
Yeah.
And so it has really taken on the identity of a lot of the show recently. So you can check out Jim and Them on YouTube. We still treat it like a radio show, but nowadays podcasts and YouTube channels and stuff are kind of the thing. So we chop up clips that we think are good, put them on the YouTube. You can watch those, or you can join us for every Friday night, 7-ish Pacific Standard Time, on the YouTube channel. Again, Jim and Them. That is those are probably my plugs, Connor. Those
I
video
love
games
it.
I worked on years ago. The ever shifting sands of the video game industry, and my convention and radio show.
Beautiful. Well, I'll put a link to, Jim and them in the show notes. And then the Level Up Expo, do you have a website for that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah,
Okay.
we got a website,
You've actually
Connor.
probably sent me a link to that before.
I'll
So
send it to you again when we get off.
thank you. So listener, you got to go follow that stuff. Scroll down, find it in the show notes. Mike, we're about to get into, a smattering of your recent history with video games, since your first appearance on the show. Before we do, I'd love if you would introduce the game you brought on for the main event later and call me by your game.
I will be talking about. Well, you know what? No, we will be talking about StarCraft II, one of my favorite games.
I'm very excited to get into it. Kind of nuts that, this hasn't been discussed on the show. I guess it was only meant to be for episode 250.
I'm so lucky because every time I even flash back to the FF6 episode, I was like, Connor, has no one talked about FF6? Connor, can
Yes.
I have that? Because that was still back in the day. And I don't mean that like your star has faded or anything, but like early on, it's like, hey, I'm picking a game that hasn't been picked
Yeah.
yet. So like that group, especially like the cream that rises to the top, I'm sure people are like fighting over certain things that are like someone brings up like here's the three games I'd like to talk about, and you're like, two of those someone's already talking about or we're about to. And so but the fact that I even got FF6 was like
Yes.
I was stoked. But yeah, I'm surprised that I mean, StarCraft, even if it's just because it's a Blizzard game, I'm surprised no one's talked about it. But I love StarCraft to death, so I will be happy to talk about all sorts of StarCraft stuff.
I love it. Well, to catch us up a little bit, Mike, getting into your recent history with video games, I've got kind of a broad question for you first, which is since you first came on in 2021 up until now, have you noticed any like broad trends in video games for you, whether it be a genre you play, a console you have been, I guess, drawn to? Is there anything like that that comes to mind?
I would say that I've got two interesting. He says about his own answer. I've got two interesting answers. I've got two, and I hate using the word interesting. I've got two things that immediately jump to my brain, so I'll just call those my answers. One is that I've never been a free to play game person. I've just never been. I don't play games on my phone almost at all. It's like I have Pokemon Go. It's
Yeah,
kind of it. I'm not a free to play person. Um, it's just kind of not my style of thing. More often than not, I like when a game I can just kind of purchase it and enjoy it. I know that a game that both Jake and I enjoy a lot is Smite, and we always liked that as a free to play MOBA game. They also just had a give us $35 and now you own the game. And anytime we
sure.
release a new character, you just get it. And occasionally you get currency just by being one of those people. And you can like it allows you to just like buy the game like you would have, and then they'll either go, cool, we got money up front, or maybe since they're playing it, they'll drop some more. But I wish more games gave you the option to like the whole free to play thing is to try and go, well, if we can't get you 60 right up front, maybe we can get more than that slowly over time.
Yeah,
But they'd still be happy if they could get that 60 or 40 or 30 or whatever. So I wish more games gave you the option to just go like, no, 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 I want to opt in up front. I want to give you that now and then never think about it again.
totally.
Uh, but there have been more and more free to play games as that's become kind of like, I mean, you look at games like my example is Infinity Nikki. You look at games like Infinity Nikki, where it's just a video game.
Yeah,
It's not multiplayer. It's not an MMO. It's just like a game. Like, but they found different ways to monetize it. Where it's like there was a game made by those same people that was like Genshin Impact. That's another one where it's not your typical free to play. It's just a game. It's like, hey, what if a game that was just a video game was free to play as opposed to like a tower defense game or a card battler or something like that. And there's been more and more games like that. I haven't like fallen into those, but I play a shitload of Marvel Rivals. Like I play
oh,
so much Marvel Rivals. I was a big Overwatch guy back before they ruined it, and I like comics, and so Marvel Rivals kind of scratches some itches, and it's also just a very good game. I think it's like a quality one of those games, um, and it's interesting because it really is just like buy a battle pass, play the game, buy a battle pass, pay the game. It's almost like having an MMO subscription kind of. And the game is good enough that I'm okay with that. And old Mike never ever would have fallen into
yeah,
that trap, so to speak. But I'm like, I guess I've fallen into the idea that there's enough of those games that it's not always a trap anymore.
sure.
And so if it feels like it's worth it to me, I have no problem. Plus, I've worked on games for so long now that I like the idea of voting with my dollar and saying, no, this is worth it. I don't care if the 2 hour game costs $60. If it was worth it, it's worth it. And vice versa. I don't care if the free to play game gets an infinitely higher amount of money out of me as long as it feels like I'm not being taken advantage of.
Sure.
So I think that that's changed a lot about me is that style of game never appealed to me. And now there's several that I have or still do play.
Yeah. And obviously this is a product of a couple of things happening, which is like though a free-to-play game has grown to mean more than what it used to mean, and there's so many versions of that as you've just detailed for us, but also, look it, you're capable of change, pal. Even
I have
you.
growth. Growth is a thing.
Yes.
I am nothing if not the perfect example of a uh, 35 to 45 demographic straight white male proving that he can grow and change and that I'm not what you think I am.
Look at you. A hero, some might even say.
You know what? I feel like I would never call myself that,
But many
but
people have.
when you call me that, it sounds perfect, like the
Oh,
perfect thing to
yeah.
call me. So yeah, yeah. And then I'd say my other thing would be MMOs. I've never been an MMO guy. Connor, I love Final Fantasy 14 so much.
Oh, do
Connor,
you?
and this is not a new thing. This is like over the last, honestly, probably around the same time that we've known each other. It's been
Sure.
around that period, but like never. I never. But here's the reason: I never trusted myself because you know how I am,
Oh,
Connor.
yeah.
You know me well enough to know that like you can text me and ask me if I've played Mass Effect, and you know the type of text message you'll
Uh-huh.
receive back. So imagine if I suddenly was like playing an MMO, like remember like early on in the WoW days where they're like, yeah, some kid died in his room because he wouldn't eat. He wouldn't leave his room, he wouldn't eat, and he wouldn't go to the bathroom, and so he died. Like I'm like, oh man, I look in the mirror and I'm like looking at that guy. That's me.
Yes.
And I was always very, very afraid. But I love Final Fantasy 14 and I like its approach to not needing you to always be there
Sure.
and like respecting your time. And also, as a person that doesn't have a lot of people to play games like that with, giving you what feels like a single player game in a populated multiplayer world first, as opposed to a multiplayer game that like when people talk about Destiny and they're like, "Oh yeah, I've got my crew." And I couldn't if I didn't have five guys I play that game with, I literally couldn't play that game.
Yeah.
As opposed to a game like Diablo where you just jump in and you might just play alone entirely and forget that there are other people. That's what FF14 lets you do. And so I mean I have FF14 neck tattoos. So I'm a real
Wow.
sicko, Connor. I'm a real fucking sicko.
You are. Oh,
Yeah,
my
I'm a
goodness.
sicko. Hmm.
I have so much I want to ask you about, even just with these first two sort of topics that you've unfolded for us. The first of which, this is getting into a little bit of game specific stuff. Well, first of all, Mike, if you are looking for people to play either of these games with, they're not me, but I do have friends and people you've done podcasts with that I could connect you with for both Marvel Rivals and FF14 if you're ever looking for that. And for Rivals, I wanted to know who do you like to play as?
So in a lot of these games, I always gravitate towards support
Mhm.
because often that is what people don't want to play. This game is actually different. I feel like tanks are kind of the thing that people are having the hardest time with. But I also know that this game is unlike Overwatch, where it's like, here's my main, and that's my main, and I play that character, and that's it. This game is all about like, hey, if you jump into a bad comp, switch up your comp. So like if you need something, change it. If you choose this and your team doesn't need that anymore, don't just play with it anyway and go, oh well. So you kind of need to have one or two people in each role. So I started off Cloak and Dagger with support. I like Cloak and Dagger the most. But Rocket and Invisible Woman obviously are very good. I don't like the other healers. They're more like kind of DPS focused. So I'm not big on them. When it comes to the like the characters that focus on DPS, I like Scarlet Witch. I like Namor. I know that that's probably going to get a lot of people don't like people that like those two characters. Connor, that's a controversial statement because they're both easy mode characters. But that's also the role I play the least of, so that's probably why. And then when it comes to tanks, my girl Penny Parker has been my favorite. She's a weird tank because she's both ranged and sort of defensive, but she just plays very differently. But she recently got a big boost in that this game has team up moves between characters. So like if you choose a character and someone else chooses another, both of you either get a special new move that you can only use because you're both on the team, or a passive increases that makes you better at something.
Oh,
And Penny got a new passive with Rocket that she basically puts down these like spider web generators that have little mines that crawl across them so you can kind of like deny locations that people run through and they take damage on. But and Rocket has this little thing he throws down that revives you if someone dies. But with the Penny and Rocket combination, now Penny gets a second like web generator thing, so she can spread more webs more
Oh,
places. And Rocket's reviver also spreads out webs, but still revives. So you can like create these huge like web networks that is very fun, and it's made her a lot more playable. And it's made people want her in games as opposed to me choosing her and everyone in the chat just like shitting on me. So there you go. Those are my Marvel rival mains for the most part. But I do play more support probably than anything. Secondary tank now that tank's in a weird place. People don't want to play tanks, so I often wind up having to play tank a lot.
okay. That's the breakdown I was hoping for.
There you go.
And for Final Fantasy 14 that I'll shift focus to now, have you played all of the, are they called campaigns? The new like
That's what I
things
call
that
them.
they'll
I mean, they're
release?
expansions, but they really are
Expansions,
just
yeah.
like all of that stuff. Yes, I am current.
Is there a style you like to play in that game?
I play red. So canonically, you can switch jobs, and
Yes.
often if you're jumping into like different raids and stuff, or going back and helping people, you're going to switch around a little bit. But I primarily when I'm not playing support, because support I just play white mage. It's straightforward. It's very easy. It's reliable. I like red mage a whole lot. Red Mage gets to do this fun thing because obviously, as a Final Fantasy person, you know Red Mage is half black, half white. That's kind of its identity. And then over time, they expanded that where they kind of like they dress like a musketeer and they have a sword and they're almost like this for the D&D people out there in the world. They're kind of a gish. That is like a person that uses both a weapon and magic. They kind of have like a gishy feel to them. So you get to do this cool like jumping around. You're very mobile. You're using your sword to dash around and backflip out of moves. You're also dropping giant magic spells on people. But then sometimes when you're in a raid, which by the way, I'm not using FF14 language. I'm trying to use language that a regular person would understand.
Sure.
So if you're an FF14 person, I promise I'm not like a fake guy. I'm just trying to be accessible here. When you're in a raid,
He's doing it for me, listener.
yeah. If you're obviously the tank is meant to go up and go, hey, bad guy, look at me. And he has moves that make guys look at him. And then he has moves that make him take less damage and then do damage. And that is usually the loop you're playing with. You expect your healer to heal you, but then healing also draws aggro. So not do so much that it pulls away from the tank, but keeps the tank alive. Then you expect the DPS players to chunk down guys really fast, get rid of big mobs, take out whoever the tank is tanking if that's the damage guy, or ignore who the tank is tanking if it's like, hey, let me get him out of the way so you can get rid of this mob. Like everyone has their job. But the red mage, since he can do so many different things, my red mage, by the way, is this dragon girl, and she's the cutest girl, and she's me, and she's important, and I love her. I love her because she's me, and she's a dragon
Is her
girl.
name like Michelle?
It is Aurora.
Aurora.
Yeah, her name is Aurora.
Is it after the Disney princess?
No, I just that's a happy coincidence. I just feel
Okay.
like it's a cool girl fantasy name. And so,
is
but
cool.
as a red mage, you can both do offensive stuff, but you can also heal. So every once in a while, you get into these situations where you're in a raid and something goes wrong, and maybe your healer didn't realize they were in a area where they're getting attacked, or the tank dropped, and so aggro pulled somewhere else before the tank could get brought back, whatever, and the healer dies. And usually that just means you're going to wipe. That's just the case. If you're in the boss fights and your healer dies, you're just dead. But the red mage can also heal, and the red mage can dual cast. That means you can go like, I charge up basically 2 spells and go, I'm doing 2 of these. And you can also do those with healing, which means that basically outside of actual healers, that's the best healing you can do in the game. And in some cases, it's even enough to keep your tank alive. So there are moments, Connor, this is the big lead up to when you're in a raid that looks like, oh, well, we wiped, let's restart. But then the red mage goes, and the red mage goes, I'm switching to heal mode. And then suddenly the tank's like, wait, why am I alive? And then they're like, oh shit, the red mage is healing. And then since you can dual cast, you can also sometimes go heal offense, and keep the tank like, but when the tank's really getting dunked on, dunk all the healing on him. But then also later in levels, you can revive. So there are times too where if it's like a big lead up to an attack, you can stop. It's got a big long casting time, but you can bring the healer back. And then you're back. You basically like kept everyone afloat. Then you bring you become this fucking hero that
Dang.
everyone, anytime a red mage gets to have that hero moment, everyone in that group is always like, at the end, it's just like, it's the guy who says no and then everyone claps for him in public. You're that guy. You get to be that guy. It's the best feeling in the world, Connor. It's such a good feeling getting to be hero red mage. So I love red mage. I also love machinist. Machinist is, by the way, just Edgar from Final Fantasy VI.
Okay, killer.
Like straight up, he has the auto crossbow. He's got the chainsaw. He's got bioblast. Like all the air anchor. All of your moves are just Edgar from Final Fantasy VI.
Incredible.
So I had to be a machinist as well for when I need to go more offensive. But yeah, red mage. Red mage is my jam. I love red mage. I love red mage. Red mage. My tattoos. I have Archon tattoos. So in Final Fantasy 14, there's these groups. They're like the main character's friends. They're called Archons. They have these tattoos on their necks that are this shape, and all of them have one. And that's what I have on my neck. And thank God that's what I got because it's symmetrical. It's on both sides. And neck tattoos hurt more than anything I've ever had. There have been 3 pains in my life. The kidney stone hurt horrible.
Oh my God.
Getting your nipples pierced as a dude because like you're kind of piercing the meat behind the nipple more than the nipple itself because it's so small.
Yeah.
Yeah, not fun.
Oh.
And then neck tattoo. Those are the 3 most painful things I've ever felt in my life.
So 1 voluntary and 2 so 1 involuntary and 2 that you chose.
Yeah. No, I was voluntary the kidney stone. I was eating a lot of cashews on purpose.
Hearing all this red mage love too, Mike. The person I'm thinking of, one of our close
Roxy?
friends. Yeah. Have you ever done a show together?
I have not. I've never wound up on the exact same, but I am familiar with her because she is in like the loop of Connor's people.
Yeah, and her like name on everything now, her username is Red Mage Roxy, as you've probably seen.
Yeah. I've quietly respected that about her for quite a long time.
Dude, I'm gonna have to just text her after this. It was actually her birthday yesterday when we were recording. To let her know that I've met another Red Mage stan.
Yes.
That's awesome. As far as that was like a great chunk of like, some recent trend stuff for you. I got a couple more questions for you though, because we've got more stuff to talk about. First of which, what's been a game that you've played recently that you want to gush about for a little bit?
Oh, a game that I've played recently that I want to gush about that's not Marvel Rivals.
Yeah.
I've had a lot, I've had a lot of disappointments.
You can talk about that too.
Lately. Cause like, so you know what we were talking about, you know what I'll do? I'll be a bummer for a second and I'll rehash something we were talking about before the store. So please. I have been a famous Sea of Stars hater.
Yes.
Which is a bummer because I was a notable Sea of Stars anticipator for like 4.5 years before that game came out. Because everything I saw and heard, I was just like, give it to me.
Did you back the game?
Yeah. Connor.
Wow.
It's a nightmare.
I probably zipped past your name in the credits yesterday.
True nightmare how that all panned out because I basically don't like anything about the game other than like it still looks good and they did a good job with like side characters, but they made a bunch of bizarre decisions. And most notably, as a big fan of Mario RPG and games that kind of do that type of combat, I really don't like their approach to any of the timed stuff. And I don't like their here's a guy with icons over his head, do the stuff or else. I don't like, I really don't like that. And so I bounced off Sea of Stars really hard and it was a bummer. Then they did a big quality of life update. It wasn't even that long ago. I think it was like either last year or early this year. And they added they added a difficulty slider. They added those like items that just start in your inventory that are essentially accessibility things.
Yes.
They added some more of that. They just made a bunch of changes that they're like, hey, we've been listening. And I was like, oh, shit. I know people loved this game, so I would not have expected a studio like this to feel the need to like, hey, we've been listening, right? Sure. You expect that out of like a game that launched poorly or launched rough. And so I was like, shit, is it time? Do I jump back in? So I jumped back in. Connor, disappointed to report, real disaster. Still didn't like almost any of my time with it. I started from scratch to really like that feeling. I hate the bosses. I hate every second I'm playing it.
Dang.
I sometimes like reading in that game, but I almost never like actually playing the game. I like looking at it.
That
It's a
is
nice
saying
game to
something
look
because
at.
that's, I think, the worst part. I mean, look, I loved this game as we were talking about. Like, truly was amazed because my expectations were so low based on things I'd heard from you and other
Yeah.
people. You're not the only person who I've seen express disappointment in this
Okay,
title.
that makes me feel better because I
Yeah,
feel like the only
you're
person.
you're not on an island. But that being said, is that for me, it was easily like the writing and the reading, especially early on. It improves a little bit, but the that's what I disliked the most
Yeah.
about it. So
It's
the
a
fact
side
that
character.
that
I
was
like the
a
side characters for what's worth. Like that
yes.
group of pirates you meet, they're awesome.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's what I like about that game. Unfortunately, I'd have to play the game to get more of that. So no,
Yep.
thank you. And then Expedition 13 or 33
Yeah.
recently came out, and I was very excited for that game. Oof. Spoiler alert, Connor. Considering I just brought up Sea of Stars and all of my problems with it, you can kind of assume that I'm going to go in the direction of saying that Expedition 33 reminds me a whole lot of Sea of Stars.
Dang.
So for people out there listening, if you think I'm crazy right now, you should go play Expedition 33 because there's a good chance that you'll like a lot of stuff about it if you like Sea of Stars. A very similar approach to the way it structures combat. Um, I kind of described it. It reminds me of a character action game. It's more like parrying in Devil May Cry than it is like timing a hammer hit in Mario RPG.
Hmm.
Um, and so if you're on the same page as me, don't bother. It's probably not for you. So it's a bummer that I bounced off a game I was anticipating forever, and then a game I was looking forward to with
Yeah,
Expedition 33. But I give everything a fair shake. I spent time with it. I try to do that. Over the years I've been playing so many games for so long that I never want to just like give up on a game, but I also don't want to slog through something for no
for
reason.
sure. Yeah.
So I've tried to just like be honest with myself and go like, Mike, do you think you should give this game more time? Or Mike, is this game really popular? And so you don't want to just go bounce off and go, what was I missing? Sometimes that's good enough for you. But also if you're like, Mike, because everybody's name is Mike, like Mike, are you wasting your time? Why are you doing this? And your answer isn't good enough, just stop. It's like you don't have to love everything. You don't have to love things people are liking. Don't be a contrarian, don't be a weirdo, but like just be honest. Like
Yeah.
when I say I don't like games, I always try to give reasons. I don't just go like it sucks. It's stupid. Like I try to like give the real reasons why. Because then usually you can at least have a conversation with someone about
Yeah.
that thing in a way where they don't just think you're like a weird hater. Um, but yeah, like just my advice to people would be like, don't slog through something because you think you have to, but also don't like feel like if I don't like it immediately, what's the point? Because sometimes both of those are unhealthy ways to play a video game.
Absolutely. I mean, well, first of all, this is the thing I hinted at before we started recording, which is like one of the things that I love most about talking with you about video games is that I think you're the person the most that I talk to who I never know what I genuinely have no clue how you're going to react to a video game because there's plenty of games where you and I are totally aligned in what we love about a game or dislike, and then there's times like this example of Sea of Stars where we're pretty much the opposite on.
Right.
But what I respect and appreciate is that you can articulate yourself really well and you seem to be coming from a place of like honesty and authenticity rather than just like I don't know, being hyperbolic or anything. Because I
Sure.
also have like heard plenty of people express different opinions than I have about video games or whatnot, and I'm like, this doesn't even seem like to be truthful or like in line with with what's actually happening in the game. But when it comes to you, I feel differently. Not just to kiss your ass too much, but I do really love that.
Thank you, Connor.
And
That means a lot.
it is a fun like thing where I'm like, hey Mike, what do you think about this game? I'm like, I don't know where the coin's gonna end up here.
No clue what's about to
No
come.
clue.
You'll see those dots, those three dots, and you're like, is this I love it or I hate it? You know
Yes.
what? I feel like I've always tried to do that, but I'm going to tell you a quick story, Connor, of a moment of shame of mine that I always think about
Yeah.
in moments when I dislike something to try and make sure that I'm not just being hyperbolic, guy who says something sucks and he hates it just to say that.
Yeah.
because there was a studio back in the day called Twisted Pixel. They made a lot of games that I think are terrible. Like I
Hmm.
think they made almost exclusively bad games. I really can't think of a single one that had almost any value. And I mean, as you can tell, I don't like their games, but they
Yeah.
made a lot of them. And often, this is in the days of the Xbox 360, like Summer of Arcade.
Oh.
Um, they made Comic Jumper. They made that Connect game where you're like a unicycle dragging a guy's
Huh.
body. They made what is it called? It's this game where you're something man and you can explode. I can't even remember what it's called. It was just bad. They don't make good games, unfortunately. But they were like well liked. For some reason, those games are connecting with people. And I just didn't understand it.
Yeah.
And so in the early days of Twitter, it was after I played Comic Jumper, which I stand by as thinking it's probably one of the worst games I've ever played. I was extra like, these guys suck in that moment. And they revealed their new game. And I went on Twitter and I made the big mistake of saying, like, this game looks awful. And then tagging them, Twisted Pixel are basically domestic terrorists. That was my tweet.
Yes.
And I was like goofing, but like you said, I was being hyperbolic in
Hmm.
my hate of this. And I did the shitty thing of tagging them in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the guy who owns Twisted Pixel replied and was like, hey, man, I'm sorry you don't like our games, but maybe give the new one a chance and maybe one of these days we'll change your mind. And
Yeah.
that's what he said to me. And I felt like such a piece of shit. Like, I felt like the biggest, like, asshole because I'm like, here I am being the worst
Yeah.
with no context out of nowhere and then rubbing this guy's face and how bad I am. And his response was like even and understandable and like, hey, cool.
Even like
Maybe,
empathetic, sort
yeah,
of.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like, even if he was putting it on, it was still his answer. And it made me go like, I don't do this often, but I want to never do this again.
Yeah.
I want
Uh-huh.
to never be this guy again. So now, more often than not, when I'm critical, I do again, like you said, um, I try to come at that with information as opposed to again, I don't want to just say like, oh yeah, that thing sucks, it's ugly, it's dumb, it's bad. I
Yeah.
want to maybe I'll say it's bad and here's why, or I think it's ugly for these reasons. But I try not to just come off with like negative platitudes, I guess, essentially.
Yeah.
That's
Totally.
not useful. It also makes it like it makes people feel alienated because
Yeah.
often if you don't like something, you're not always talking to someone else who doesn't like it. In our case, we're talking about a game that we have in common and one of us likes and one of us doesn't. And it makes that conversation easier where the person doesn't feel like insecure or attacked for liking that game.
Yeah.
Instead, it's like the difference between like in a weird way, people want to say games are art. Yet when people talk about art, it is almost always, here's my take on it. What's your take on it? They're not the same. Here's why I feel this way. Like that sounds like weird pontification, but and it's not a realm I exist in, but I know that that's how people talk about that stuff. And you can talk about games that way real easily, and more often than not, someone's gonna either see where you're coming from or at least not think you're a giant dickhead for disliking the thing they love
Yeah.
when you talk about stuff that way.
Yeah. I mean, you just shared an example too of a story. We were kind of joking about it, but also being a little serious. And like, that's a moment of growth too. And like, sometimes we have to, unfortunately, embarrass ourselves to go through change. And I wish more people would do that on, not
Yeah,
necessarily embarrass themselves, but like learn from past shame, I guess.
sure. Look inwards and go, "Ooh, I don't want to be that guy," and I didn't. I really don't. And to be fair, like I'm not trying to say like here's who I used to be and now I'm this like new guy. Like I'm
For
not.
sure.
Actually, talk to Kristen Thorson about that sometime. She has an interesting journey in her very very specific like look at who she wanted to be and who she thought she was. And Kristen's awesome. And
Dude.
I really respect the way she looked at some of that stuff and like her like transition from living on the internet to trying to be who she wants to be as opposed to who she thought she was.
Yeah.
But like that's something that I think is like I was rarely that guy, but the time I was so aggressively that guy and then thrown back in my face so starkly, I could not help but have it be like an important thing for me to look
Yes.
back on and try to never be again.
Totally. Well, I'm glad it happened to you, but I'm sorry at the same time. But yeah, so that was awesome. That was like a great tangent from like being disappointed in games and being able to like just have conversations about it. I have one last question for you,
Oh shit,
Mike.
sorry.
Oh, yes.
Splosion Man. That was the game.
I've actually
Splosion
heard of
Man
that.
and Miss Splosion Man. I hate those games.
Okay, good.
They feel bad and they have a weird art style. And it was the Summer of Arcade where Connor, damn it, Summer Arcade is like 5 to 4 games are supposed to be the cream of the crop. And one
Yes.
of them is being taken up by Splosion Man.
You know
Ah.
what? While you're talking about this, I'm gonna craft a tweet. Explosion Man, that's right. I've definitely heard that
Yeah.
title before. The last
But yes,
question
I'm
I
sorry.
have.
What was your
Oh yeah,
question,
no,
man?
you're good. The last question during this segment before we hit break, Mike, is what is a game that you are looking forward to playing? This could be something that's already out, that's in your backlog,
Ooh.
or something that is on the horizon.
Let me pull up my GameFly, which
You still have?
I am the biggest GameFly booster you will ever meet. GameFly to this day, if anything, more now than ever,
Yeah.
because games are in such a weird spot and they're going to start costing more soon. So, like, your investment versus your disappointment could, like, be a stark difference than they used to be. Um, I think that there's no situation where GameFly isn't a better deal now even than it's ever been.
Wow.
And now that Nintendo's changed the way key cards work for their like this is how your game works and stuff, that actually leans more in the direction of a physical version with a digital counterpart that actually
Hmm.
makes GameFly better than when like there was that fear of like the Xbox you can't trade games and games don't work and blah blah blah. That almost made me afraid for GameFly, but that future didn't happen. Luckily, GameFly's great. We were both talking about our Switch 2s. I am looking
Yes.
forward to Donkey Kong Bonanza.
Me
Um,
too.
I won't say I'm disappointed with Mario Kart, but I think that their design aspiration to separate themselves from Mario Kart 8 is very emphasized on the wall rides and rail riding. And because of that, mixed with the courses being this like half one thing, half another thing transition, none of the courses have a firm identity. And from a design standpoint, as far as fun, they're often very bland because
Hmm.
they're so focused on wall rides and rails that you may or may not even notice. And then if you do, feel very samey as opposed to a fun, interesting course just from scratch. So I say that saying I've played a bunch of Mario Kart and probably will continue. I'm a little lukewarm about its direction, and I'm
Sure.
hoping that maybe some obviously they'll support this game, and down the road maybe they'll have some more uh interesting visually and interesting gameplay wise courses for me to play. But because of that, and being basically the only new game besides Welcome Party, which seems like a real bummer that they've charged money for that. Like
I
that should have
know.
either been $2 or free. I know everyone in the world said that. It's a weird thing they did, but Bonanza is kind of the next game on the horizon, and I really like what they showed. I think that
Did you watch the direct this morning?
yes, I did.
I have
I
not watched
every
it, but you can share whatever
oh,
you want
I,
about
I
it. I
won't
like
talk specifically. I will say it continued to make me interested because the things I
cool.
do like about my Switch is it feels really good in my hands.
Hmm.
I'm impressed with the battery life considering what I'm playing, and visually, it's really nice seeing um, Nintendo games look and run this good. And looking at what Bonanza wants to do from like a gameplay loop design standpoint, I like what they're going for. I think it looks like artistically good, and then like fun factor, it looks good. Like I'm excited, and I love that they've gone back to like the old like Donkey Kong Jr. era version of Donkey Kong. Don't get me wrong, I like the Donkey Kong Country games, but those kind of just became his default look forever.
Yeah.
So I think that they're making a pretty strong statement by not choosing that and by having him look like old NES Donkey Kong to kind of like say, hey, this is a new game for a new crowd with a new idea, and I like what they're going for, and so I'm pretty excited about Bonanza. So let's say that is my choice, Connor.
Awesome. I love it. Me too. It's kind of it's I'm very much we're going to be covering the Death Stranding 2 for our next Games Club series.
I'm sorry.
I'm
My
honestly,
condolences,
hey, I
Connor.
couldn't be more excited. Don't you worry. Don't you worry for me, Mike. Uh, I'm stoked, even though it's going to be a very interesting show to program for because we're going to be playing it as it comes out. I'm sure someone out there will have a guide already, but normally
Sure.
we kind of base our roadmap off of that. Anyway, we'll see. Um, but Bonanza is the game after that that I am also am thrilled about, and I partly stayed away from Treehouse Lives directs just because I already know I'm looking forward to it,
Yeah, that's a
and
good approach. I like
yeah,
that approach. I actually condone that approach a lot. I can't always follow my own rule, but I
yes,
usually tell people like if you're already excited, you might as well not. If you need the excitement, check it out. Same with like movie trailers. Sometimes I'll just be like, "Hey, I saw the first movie trailer. I'm into it. I don't need to see more."
yeah,
I think that's a good approach. It's a fun approach. It lets you come into games kind of like with a more like childlike magic
yes.
involved.
Yeah. I totally agree. So I try to do it when it fits.
Sure.
Um, well, I know I said that was the last question, but I do have one more question for you because I thought you may have brought it up, but you
Connor,
didn't.
you know that you can ask me 100 things forever and we can have a 9 hour podcast and I will never have a problem with that.
I love it. Well, here comes Mike. Have you played the PS5 version of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle yet?
I have.
What do you think?
I don't like it.
Oh,
I
you don't
don't
like
like it.
it.
I really, really don't like
Was
it.
that so disappointing for you?
Dude, there's almost nothing I can think of that's like in the last year or so that's been more disappointing because I was very, very excited about that.
Yeah.
I was like, visually, I like what they're doing. Like, I'm watching the trailers. It looks like a fun approach. They're doing almost like an immersive sim type approach to Indiana
Oh yeah.
Jones.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good developer to do that with. I liked the Wolfenstein games, and you can kind of appreciate where their heads at as far as like approach to storytelling and also gameplay and not necessarily needing those two to even have anything to do with each other because like
Mm-hmm.
that's such a bonkers game with such solemn storytelling. It's like it's very interesting. So I'm like, yeah, no, I trust everything about this. This is great. Then it came out. I heard nothing but good stuff, and I'm like, cool. I'm gonna play it when it comes out. I played it as soon as came out. Man, I could not have bounced off again. I don't like
Wow.
anything. I think everything feels like a slog. I don't like the way that I don't even like where they put the things you're doing on the buttons. Like they
Oh
feel
sure.
wrong. I think visually it's a remarkably impressive looking game.
Yeah.
I like that they chose to take the approach to like their tutorial as the movie. I think that
Oh
was a
sure.
fun way to tutorialize it, um, and an interesting way to tutorialize it. Maybe that I think maybe that's the only nice thing I can. I
Dang.
really don't. I spent probably about 7 or 8 hours. I got out of Vatican City about as fast as I possibly could because I was like having no fun, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's just Vatican City I don't like. Turns out it's kind of just that game's approach to making that game. It's a shame. What I did do is I watched a YouTube video that was just like, here, watch this game like it's a movie. So I
Yes.
watched that. That was fun. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, unfortunately, man, it was because Indiana Jones, in my opinion, is the best trilogy ever made. Lord of the Rings probably comes close, if not, maybe they're neck and neck. But like, I love. Like people assume it's going to be Star Wars for me because I get Star Wars tattoos. I like Star Wars a lot, but to me, Indiana Jones kind of takes it a little bit more. And those first three movies are fantastic. And to be completely honest, after how bad the fifth movie was, even the fourth movie seems all right in a lot of ways. And so it's been a real bummer the way Indiana Jones has been treated in media for like the last decade or so.
Dude.
And I was hoping this game would change things, and unfortunately, it did not.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. No wonder you didn't bring it up already, because
No,
I knew that the PS5 release date had come and gone, and I was one of the early adopters on the Xbox Series
yeah.
version. And again, had a complete opposite feeling.
I'm
I
sorry.
adored the experience. It's so, dude, don't worry about it at all. But I thank you for closing the loop on our buddy Henry Jones Jr.
Yeah. No
Mike,
one wanted to like that game more than me. No
truly.
one.
Yeah, you couldn't have given it more of a fair shake. Mike, thanks for diving into a little more of your recent history of video games. That was fun, dude.
Thank you, Connor.
You betcha. We're going to take a quick break, and finally when we come back, we'll get into all things StarCraft II. So Mike, I will see you on the other side. Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game. Connor McCabe here, returning with my guest, Mike Steele. Mike, welcome back.
Oh, hey, what's up? It's me, Mike.
Hey, buddy. It's finally time to get into all things StarCraft II. I'm going to do the table setting that I always do, and as I told you before the show, jump in with whatever context you think that the listeners should know about this game, Mike. Before
you do
we
a
dive
good job. I feel like I never need to, because you always got it covered.
There's I will say, as you know, peek behind the curtain, when I was like just beginning my preparation for what I thought might be a StarCraft 1 episode.
Because of me. That's my fault,
Hey,
everybody.
I'm glad I clarified, though. This is why, you know, I've been around this block before. I recently accidentally prepared for the wrong game on someone. It was not their fault. It was my fault.
Wait, what game?
Well, I was remembering, I thought that they wanted to talk about GTA 4 and they wanted to discuss GTA Vice City. So we just pushed the recording like 5 days.
You should have let them show up. I just, they'd be like, yeah. But then you start talking about GTA 4 and force them to either correct you or just talk about GTA 4. That would have been so funny.
Well, dude, in the preamble, before we even were recording, I was like, okay, so then we'll get into all things GTA 4 here. And he's like, hey, this is semantics, but I actually wanted to discuss GTA Vice City. And sure enough, it's like in our texts. I totally screwed it up. But truly, I will say when I was prepping for what was going to be StarCraft 1, there was a lot more context in that as far as like sort of world setting. So you still have the green light, even though I might do a good job.
You could probably use the same world setting. And that makes sense because StarCraft, Connor, you know this. You know the magical year of 1998, the year where every video game was released? StarCraft is one of the magical 1998 releases.
It
when
really
you look
is.
at that year and they go like, that's probably the best year of video game releases in history. Yep. It's like become a famous year. StarCraft is among those elite games, Connor. It's probably going to have more.
I love it. Well, let's get into it. I'll just start talking. You jump in when you want to, Mike, or I might even turn to you. StarCraft II is a real-time strategy video game, RTS, if you will, created by Blizzard Entertainment, first released in 2010. A sequel to the massively popular StarCraft, as Mike said, originally released in 1998. It is set in a militaristic far future. The narrative centers on a galactic struggle for dominance among various races. This already feels like a great point to turn to you, Mike, and be like, hey, give us a little synopsis. What the heck are the Zerg? Who hates each other? What should we know now?
So the great thing about StarCraft is that now, right off the bat, a lot of people accuse them of kind of like cribbing like Warhammer from it, mostly because there are Space Marines in it.
Yeah.
I don't see it. I get it. Technically, a big Space Marine suit looks like a big Space Marine suit. I will grant that. I don't see it. But for that aside, the big fun thing about StarCraft is that it takes like the dirty world of Star Wars style sci-fi, but then like drags it through the mud, and instead of like where you'd say that is what Star Wars is compared to Star Trek, but then StarCraft is even like I think the term space trucker has been thrown around because it's like it really is just like, what if like a movie about coal miners but in space? That's what StarCraft is. But then also it's in the future, so there are like the feral animalistic style aliens that are the Zerg. There are the above it, beyond it, transcendent aliens that are the Protoss, and like all of them have to like exist in this world where they were either not aware of each other or didn't exist in various capacities, and now suddenly, like almost in a wrestling style approach to like, we used to be enemies, but now we're friends, or I don't like you, but damn it, I respect you, or I know, or like Romeo and Juliet, like our people don't get along, but you and me, we're on the same page, let's go change their minds. Like a lot of that stuff. which obviously isn't any type of storytelling, but in this it's just so perfectly because they took the video game approach of going, hey, instead of like Age of Empires or something where there's a bunch of races, but what changes them is like one unit and how quickly they gather gold or their ships cost less or something. They're like, let's make 3 very distinct things. Like, they don't play the same. It's not like Warcraft and Warcraft 2 were the games that preceded StarCraft.
Yeah.
Obviously, even the name evokes that.
Yeah.
It was very much like humans and orcs, but it's like humans have this, orcs have this, but they're the same unit. It's just the orc version and the human version. And that was very much their approach. Slightly less than Warcraft 2, but that was still kind of like minor differences. StarCraft was like, no, we are really making a big jump. And it was like 3 entirely different play styles. You're not even playing the same game when you're playing as one, to the point where when you play as them in the game, especially in StarCraft 2, the actual expansions are themed around a specific race, because it would be weird to jump around between them because their play styles are so different.
Sure.
Which is kind of what sets this game apart just in real-time strategy games in general. Like, throwing all the lore and story out the window, the game itself, like, they took that approach. So I like that they married the gameplay of let's make 3 distinct races to the storytelling of what would the universe look like. And they really made the universe important. It's not just set dressing. It's not just a coat of paint. There are games you play where they could have done anything, or like even like artistic directors are like, oh yeah, we went with cell shading because we just thought that'd be more interesting, where you can tell that like it didn't matter. It's not that it like was pointless, but it wasn't like an imperative to them.
Sure.
Where StarCraft, it's like very, very important that the storytelling and the world that they built and the gameplay all kind of like are
like cohesive.
Yeah.
Look at us.
Look at us. We did it twice. We did cohesive and look at us.
If we did it the 3rd time, we would have just became the same person.
Yeah, we would have, the show's over. We would have become someone who didn't know how they felt about Sea of Stars. And they're so successful that I believe that I have never read more side books for a franchise than I have for StarCraft.
Wow.
Connor, there are so many novels. There are so many StarCraft novels. I've read them all. I love them all. They take place sometimes they're prequels to games, sometimes they're retelling of games. The most recent one, and unfortunately it's been a while, was a sequel to StarCraft II's ending, so that it gives you like an idea of what the world looks like functionally without some of the main characters, which is a great idea for a novel. The StarCraft novels don't fuck around. They are very much like trying to make this universe feel lived in and make these characters or extend these characters beyond cameos or small appearances in the game. And they do an exceptionally good job. And I feel like that, again, loops back into speaking to the type of world they created when they made the game is worthy of like being able to carry all of that.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for just catching us a little up to speed outside of me just, giving the 1-sentence narrative about galactic struggle. That gives us some real context and some weight, not just from a narrative perspective, but how obviously, as you were heavily emphasizing, how different the 3, I guess, races play. To continue here, StarCraft II. The single-player campaign is split into 3 installments, each of which focuses on one of the 3 races, as Mike told us already. We have StarCraft II Wings of Liberty, which is what was released in 2010. Who does that focus on?
Jimmy Raynor and the Terrans.
There we go. Heart of the Swarm, released in 2013.
That's Sarah Kerrigan and the Zerg, of course.
I've heard of Kerrigan. Does she go by Captain Kerrigan?
No, she does not.
Okay, I don't know what I'm thinking of.
She's a ghost. She's an ex-ghost.
Okay.
She goes she's the Queen of Blades. Maybe that's what you're thinking.
Who's to say? And then lastly, we have, not lastly, but then we have Legacy of the Void. That must be the Zerg in 2015.
That's the Protoss, so it's a splintered group of Protoss.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Okay. And then a final campaign pack called StarCraft II Nova Covert Ops, released in 2016. Any details?
Fan favorite character Nova, who was actually, she was going to be the main character of that third person shooter that like the historically, like, they were making a shooter and it, like, they showed it at E3 and there were demos and people had played it and then they just canceled it. Just out of nowhere canceled it. Nova was the main character, so they ended up wrapping her into StarCraft II. So she shows up a little bit, but then post the campaign finishing, they did like a little, just like almost mini DLC campaign of just like Nova stuff. She is very popular.
Interesting. The multiplayer gameplay spawned a separate esports competition that later drew interest from companies other than Blizzard and attracted attention in South Korea and elsewhere, similar to the original StarCraft esports. I also want to say that I don't know if it was just for the first game or the second. I'm sure you can clarify, but that it was televised regularly in South Korea.
Dude, StarCraft is not it does not screw around in Korea. I believe that MOBAs have supplanted them, but StarCraft it's kind of like the MLB. It's undeniably not as popular in the United States anymore as the NBA or the NFL, but it's not like nothing. Like, it's not like this thing that no one thinks about or talks about. That's what StarCraft has become. But at the time, in its heyday, like the StarCraft I Brood War, which was their expansion, dude, it was the national sport, basically. Yeah. It was huge. Like, the most famous people in that country were the professional players of StarCraft. Like, it was massive. And because of that, Korea, and when I say Korea, I mean specifically South Korea, obviously, looms heavy over the esports scene of competitive StarCraft, to the point where my favorite player, his name is Cyril, he is a Welsh European player, and he is arguably considered the greatest StarCraft player of all time, because what he did, I'm going to get the years wrong, I want to say it was around 2019 or so, I believe, he became the world champion. He went in to the big competitive scene and started making waves, and people are like, who the hell is this non-Korean guy that's hanging with the Koreans, but then beating the Koreans. And then at BlizzCon that I attended in Anaheim, I was in the crowd, everyone, like, Cyril was the favorite, and everyone's like, dude, this is the first time a non-Korean player has been the favorite, let alone making top 8.
Wow.
And he was running the table. So it came down to him and another very popular Korean player who had won multiple championships. And Cyril, dude, like, I don't even think he took a single game off of Cyril. And it was like, I've never been in a louder room. Like, I've been to Evos and stuff. You get those big hype moments where everyone's like, the crowd is electric. I don't know if I've ever been in a competitive gaming crowd as crazy as when Cyril put down that last game and became the world champ at BlizzCon. It was a massive deal. And he's a Zerg player, which I also love. Like, Zergs are my race. And so it was like, that was like a big, like, changing of the guard, to the point where right now, just like I mentioned, StarCraft is still popular in Korea. It's just not the game. But European players have basically made their mark where they are every bit as respected as Korean players now. And American players are all bad. There's like 2 of them. They're not good. Unfortunately, it's a bummer. We're never going to be the guys. But yeah, no, European StarCraft players, like, all because of Cyril, it really is like I'd call it like a 60-40 split with Europe and Korea, where Korea is still 60 because they still got some amazing players. But I believe the best player in the world right now, last time there was a championship, was between 2 Europeans. So it was the first, if I'm correct, the first championship between 2 StarCraft players where neither of them was a Korean player.
Unreal. But cool to hear. It's cool to hear from you too, how it sort of exploded from there and then spread as well. That's amazing.
No, it was huge. It was so big. And I think that's probably what kept the competitive scene alive for so long, because it didn't need to be big, because one country was so all in that it kind of kept things going. And to this day, they still do tournaments. I think the World Series of Esports, which people have a lot of opinions about because there's a lot of Saudi money involved in that. But they did basically create this big bracket of like lots of different teams create teams that then play in different games, and then you win your game and your team gets points, and it's kind of like an Olympics approach to esports. StarCraft II was a part of that last year.
Wow.
So up until as recently as a year ago, the biggest esports tournament in the world hosted StarCraft. That's
amazing. The last little detail I have here, Mike, before I turn to you a little more and then get into your personal history with the game, is that since 2017, StarCraft II multiplayer mode, co-op mode, and the first single-player campaign have been free to play. Outside of the context we've already dove into and just sort of the table setting, is there anything that you think we should include about StarCraft II contextually before we talk about your history?
I mean, for people that don't realize, because like real-time strategy is not a genre that everyone has dabbled in. Like there are people that are like, oh, I play video games, but I don't play every first-person shooter. Sometimes I like an RPG, but I don't like RPGs. Or sometimes I like Call of Duty, but I don't really play many shooters. Like there's lots of stuff like that, but very rarely is like an RTS like, oh yeah, well everyone's played at least one RTS. Like sometimes it's just like, nope, haven't even touched them. And people would be excused for being in that position, but StarCraft kind of reinvented the real-time strategy game, because once it released, no one ever went back. Where like the Age of Empires approach and the Warcraft approach had always kind of been like, if there are multiple races, it's essentially a 90% copy with a tiny little difference. Again, Age of Empires was all about like different races within like the history of the world, and like, oh, Phoenicians were known in history for being sailors, so their boats move 10% faster. And every race has one unit that's just theirs, but it's really just kind of a recolored version of an existing unit. Like the British longbowman or the Scottish woad raider is just an axeman and a longbowman, but like slightly better. Like that had kind of been RTS. But once StarCraft came out, basically anyone making a real-time strategy game for the next like 2 decades took the approach of like, what are our races? What are our like
interesting
factions? What are the like? There was very little like, here's the one thing.
Yeah,
like it just didn't happen very often.
The influence was just so heavy.
Yeah, Total Annihilation's maybe a notable difference, but they also were more hero focused. But yeah, even Warcraft 3 took that same approach later on. Many real-time strategy games have come and gone. There's been lots of indie stuff. There's stuff like Grey Goo. Even right now, there's like 3 different ones that are like people that all used to work at Blizzard going off. Unfortunately, one of them just got shut down. I think they were in alpha and they ended up announcing like, hey, we're not moving forward. And that was the one with the main like multiplayer designer who worked at Blizzard on StarCraft 2. So that's kind of like crazy. It was a very different approach. It was a like quick and dirty 10-minute matches, no building your bases. It's all about just building units and doing matchups. It was all micro, no macro. Where in real-time strategy, macro is your economy, and micro is your movement, because you're moving around little objects. So if I can micro better, that means I can stop my guys from dying. If I can macro better, that means I have a good economy to build more guys to kill you or whatever. But that's like, it basically changed stuff forever until pretty much recently, where now people are like, maybe we're a single player only, maybe we're a multiplayer only, maybe we don't have races, we just have big pools of units, maybe everyone's taking new approaches. But for the longest time, StarCraft's shadow loomed over the entire genre for that long.
Wow. Incredible. Well, we're here, Mike. We're going to get into your personal history with the game, and I know that a lot of that has to do, at least your discovery of StarCraft II has to do with you playing the first game.
Yes, which we've talked about Jake a lot. Jake and I played a shitload of StarCraft 2. I mean, StarCraft. Well, I mean, we played StarCraft 2 as well, but tons of StarCraft. In fact, we were in a computer science class in high school, and very little computer science was learned in that, because our teacher was entirely checked out, and we learned how to get StarCraft on the LAN network in there. And so basically all I did for an entire year of high school, I believe it was probably my junior year, was in that class was play StarCraft.
Awesome.
I played a ton of that inside and outside. Obviously, use map settings in StarCraft have been there's no like dead amount of history for that either, because like MOBAs literally exist because of StarCraft. StarCraft made use map settings where you take their maps and their tools and you can make your own little multiplayer modes. And they were like a fun way to play online where people would make like little RPGs or missions or whatever. But literally, they made like Heroes of New Earth and Dota and all that stuff came from Warcraft 3's use map settings, which was lifted directly from StarCraft. And so people made the games they were making in StarCraft, but they had more tools at their disposal in Warcraft 3, which turned into going like, well, what if this mod was just a game, which became some of the arguably the biggest games on the planet with League of Legends and Dota 2 and stuff like that. All of that comes from the lineage of StarCraft.
Bonkers.
And so we played a ton of those. So yeah, it was a big thing I played growing up. Again, I read a lot of the books because even back then, for the first game, they were releasing books like novels that coincided with, told side stories of. But one of the things I liked most about StarCraft is as much as I would play online with friends, I liked that it had a story, because I had come from Age of Empires and Age of Empires 2, where realistically you were in theory jumping through history, but there was no through line, there was no campaign, there weren't characters, there wasn't a story. And I loved that StarCraft had characters and a story and personality. And again, they built a world very much like what BioWare did with Mass Effect, where they dabbled in Star Wars and decided, you know what? We kind of want to make something. So they created a world as opposed to a game. They created a world that then their game took place in. That's kind of what they did with StarCraft. And it shows. And so like it's telling a pretty crazy story. And it ends on a crazy cliffhanger that then in the expansion picks up where you're now playing as a new faction, which at the time felt crazy, playing from the other side. And then 12 years pass. Basically, well, I guess it's 10 because of when Brood War came out, but 10 years past, no StarCraft.
Bonkers.
But they didn't need to because Korea loved it so much and it was playing, but they just didn't. There was no fucking StarCraft, Connor, for 10 years. It was crazy. And think about how different you view 1998 to when you view 2012.
It is a different universe almost. Like it's me versus me when I'm 8 years old versus me when I'm 20 years old. Like a second grader versus a sophomore in college.
Yeah, like the first game uses like sprites.
Yeah.
The StarCraft 2 is like fully 3D. Like that's how big of it was a massive change in time. And I know that one of their big things is they always like they kind of almost took the Valve approach, where like Valve has always talked about like they don't want to make a game if they don't have a reason to make a game, and that's kind of their approach. That's why they release so many books. Actually, is they're like, well, people like the world, but like we're not sure if we're ready yet. And then it just kind of disappeared. They had all sorts of other franchises. Diablo became very popular. World of Warcraft became very popular, which is honestly crazy because Warcraft felt like an afterthought once StarCraft came out. You kind of like pictured it like, oh, that's them moving forward. But then when they went back to Warcraft and then WoW blew up and became Blizzard's biggest game, it very much changed their approach to maybe StarCraft isn't the thing we need right now. We've got other stuff to make. And so StarCraft kind of like was gone for a while.
Yeah.
But then when they came back with StarCraft 2, it's Connor, I assume you haven't played StarCraft 2, correct?
I've only played the first one on a friend's computer growing up, but never the second.
Okay, so one of the big things that I like that they did with StarCraft 2 is by no means were they not approaching the multiplayer side of things for people, but they didn't forget that people that loved those characters and that story and that world existed, because they went so hard in the story direction. It's kind of like when you're not in the real-time strategy sections of the game, you're playing Mass Effect.
Interesting.
You've got friends and loyalty missions, and you're making decisions that change which missions you go on and who factions with you and whether the Protoss like you or not and are helping you or not, or whether you're like to the point where you're making selections on units where they have a lot of fun with like, did you play Diablo 3 much?
I've played like 10 hours of it.
Okay, so you know how like
no.
you can like you get your ability and then you have the runes and it's like I have firebolt. And then the runes are, okay, the firebolt is now shorter range, but shoots 5 of them. And now the firebolt's a stream, and it actually just keeps going forever. And now firebolt's actually an ice bolt. And it
spreads, it like chains through enemies or whatever.
Yes, they had that rune approach to things. That's what they did for the units in the game. And you were like making those decisions based on what you do in missions and whether you complete side objectives. You get like, so it's like, oh, now you're a guy that gathers things. You start with like 10 of them because you chose to make this thing. Or, oh, now this thing that allows you to make more units, you can like tap it and it like goes underground and doesn't block you off from walking. And you can put a thing on top of it to make it cover even more, so it's taking up less space. And, oh, this unit, now when it kills a guy, instead of killing it, it spawns 2 little underlings that are like smaller versions of it that last for 10 seconds. So you might want to mass those, attack a bunch of guys, and then double your army as you're killing guys. Or, oh, this unit has a beam that charges and gets stronger, but instead, this unit now, instead of charging, it like bounces off and chain lightnings to other guys. And it's just like, it's like that for every unit. Every unit in the game has like the different modes based on who you're going with and whose missions you're completing and who you're like loyal to and all this fun stuff that's like, why is this in a real-time strategy game?
Yeah.
This is like, I swear, it reminded me a ton of Mass Effect. Like, it really, I think at the time I said like, oh, it's like Mass Effect 3, but inside of StarCraft.
It only endeared you more, I'm sure.
Oh my God, Connor. I was so there for it. And it was really, really cool because you have this hub world and you choose certain things and the side objectives all change the way your units are and you get to choose who you're loyal to. So like you could replay it and have, like not having like full on like good guy runs, bad guy runs, but just like change the thing you do. And since the characters are actual characters, like you're embodying them and you're caring about them and you're like, oh no, can I betray that person? Or, oh no, how do I think about this thing? And, oh, they all hate Sarah. They don't think she's changed. But I love Sarah. I'm going to side with her. And then everyone's mad at you. And you're like, oh, I'm sorry. I made that guy who I like mad at me. It's really, really cool the way they took an almost story-first approach to a historically esports competitive game. And that didn't, like, mess anything up because what they also did was they're just like, fuck it, we got 2 teams now, we'll have the guys that were going to do that go and do that, and then we'll have the story guys do their own thing, to the point where like playing Terran in campaign and playing Terran online, you will see units that you just won't see online because they're like, we don't know how to balance that. We don't know how to make that a unit that works online with people, so we just didn't include it. That's in the campaign. Or we brought back old units from StarCraft 1 that you just don't have online, but that's because we're playing single player and story and we're building stuff in a different way, so it can exist as not needing to be identical for both. And that was like profound at the time because so many games are like, oh yeah, that gun's broken. It doesn't really hurt like low level play, but in high level play it's super, super broken, so they nerfed it. But now that sucks for us because we're not playing high level, so now it's just that character's useless. And you're like, that's what games deal with now. Modern games, Overwatch had to deal with that a ton. Marvel Rivals is dealing with that. All sorts of competitive games deal with that. And StarCraft was just like, fuck it. We'll just make the games almost like they're 2 games that exist alongside each other. And it was kind of a profound approach, especially for me, a guy who was much more on the single-player campaign side of things than I was on the competitive playing online, getting sweaty side of things.
Yeah. No, I feel like going into this, despite my brief research, I was having some trouble, finding like distinct ways to see what was it that 2 built on and did differently. And I feel like that's a lot of what you just laid out for me, which is incredible. One thing I want to ask you, too, because I don't think we really touched on this too much, is do you remember anticipating this game coming out, being a big fan of the first one?
Oh, dude, it was like I remember when they showed it off at BlizzCon for the first time, because it was like, again, big, long chunk of time. 10 years is a long time. Technically 12 if you just count from StarCraft's release as opposed to Brood War, which was the expansion. It's a long time. You're a different person. You're in a different world. Technology is entirely different. Obviously, like back in the day, real-time strategy games are like, you can only select this many units at once. You can only have this many things on screen. playing online against people, ping was a completely different thing because you're on dial-up internet and stuff. Like the world was just different. So it was like you kind of get that version of StarCraft you've pictured in your head where you're like, oh my God, I'm looking at a 3D version of StarCraft, and I'm looking at like cut scenes of these characters looking like people and not like cartoon characters. And dude, fever pitch. I was like, I could not have been more excited. And then obviously South Korea, much like Mike Steele, was very, very excited for it.
Yes.
So I was like, at least I know that if South Korea is the only people in the world that buy this game, they'll make it a success, so I'll continue to get to play it.
Yes.
But it was also a big deal because to jump into some of the story, like the big crux of StarCraft is there's the humans, the Terrans, they're off out in the world. They colonize different planets. They mine planets, not in a modern colonizer.
Yes.
I guess kind of a little bit, but like actual colonies, like true uninhabited planet. Let's go live there. Let's make a life there. Let's make a city there. Humans are everywhere. The group called the Zerg, they are a hive mind. They are essentially, they assimilate things into themselves to then evolve and become better. And they are scary aliens. They are the scary monster-looking aliens. Then there are the Protoss. The Protoss are like the transcendent, been around since the dawn of time. They don't even have mouths anymore because they communicate purely psychically.
How do they eat Taco Bell breakfast, Mike?
I know. They're really missing. I think that they simply register the aura of Taco Bell breakfast and then decide whether or not it pleases them or not. They can harness psionic energy to create like blades of energy. They can turn invisible. They're like that type of alien. The like monkish warrior future alien as opposed to the scary xenomorph monster alien. And so the humans are basically afraid of the Protoss because the Protoss are basically Independence Daying themselves around the universe. They are literally showing up to planets and, in their terms, glassing them, where like a bunch of ships nuke the planet and then dip, and no one knows why. Now, the humans have never had a relationship with the Protoss, but they've never had an antagonistic relationship because they've never had a relationship. They've just kind of been... I'm again, for any StarCraft people out there, I'm giving Connor the digestible version of this.
Yes.
But they mostly never had any relationship, but they're now afraid of them because they don't know why that's happening. So the humans have... something called the Ghost Program. The Ghost Program is where they take people that show a lot of potential, kind of Master Chief-ish, like as children, to then fuck around with them and basically enhance their abilities to make them these things called ghosts. They're like snipers that can use psychic powers and turn invisible. They can use pyrokinesis. They can turn off electronics. Like they're fucking scary. And they're not like it's basically the humans going, we're in a bigger world than we used to be, and we need something that can compete with that world now that we've seen what the Protoss are like. And so one of the main characters is a girl named Sarah Kerrigan, and she is a ghost. She is very charming and likable, and she meets our main character, Jimmy Raynor, who is a sheriff in a backwoods, like literally when I say sheriff, he looks like a space cowboy. He talks like, this is Jimmy, I'm Jimmy Raynor, and I'm out in outer space, and hey, you better not mistreat me because I'll kick you right off this planet. Like he's that kind of like outer space cowboy guy. And Jimmy fucking rules. Jimmy is awesome. But Jimmy is not like a part of the larger Earth Dominion. He is very much like backwoods
lone wolf,
coal mining planet guy. Just keeping his small neck of the woods safe until they start seeing these things called the Zerg, and they're scary. And Jimmy, as the law in town, has to kind of like help protect them. But when they start like rolling in mass, and they start realizing like, wait a second, the Zerg are like covering these planets, taking all the life, taking the best parts about them, integrating them into themselves to make them better, and then moving on. And that starts encroaching on worlds that are human inhabited. And so suddenly Jimmy, this small-time sheriff on a backwoods outpost, is like, surrounded by military leaders and giant starships and trained Marines, and he was an ex-Marine, of course, and ghosts like Sarah Kerrigan, who they don't get along super well at first, but they then realize what they like about each other, and very early in the first game, Sarah is on a planet, and they find out that what the Earth is doing is, unbeknownst to them, a very dictatorish bad leader, which is very hard to understand right now in our current climate.
I can't quite put myself there, but go ahead.
Just try and imagine a world where someone was unilaterally leveraging a government in their image, and as opposed to the good of the whole, right?
Interesting.
Try and picture that. And what they come up with something called a psi emitter, which lures the Zerg. And so the Zerg had been doing that, but then the humans were like, basically the leader humans are like, we can't fight the Protoss, but what if we turn the Zerg against them?
Okay.
We're afraid of everything. What if we turn this awful thing into a weapon against this unknown thing? Very human in science fiction move. But like, that's in the upper echelon of the government and military, and the regular people, the boots on the ground guys, don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, but unbeknownst to them, to get everybody on the side of what's going on, they basically put a psi emitter on a human occupied place so that everyone will be like, oh no, the Zerg are invading and they're after us. We have to do something about this. And so they are both using the psi emitters to try and lure Zerg towards the Protoss, but also they're doing propaganda to try and like turn humans into being afraid of the Zerg, so that no matter what move we make, we can say it's all to take out the Zerg.
Yeah.
When really we're largely in charge of it, and that comes to basically Jimmy Raynor's front door. And so Sarah Kerrigan, a ghost, learns about this, and on a planet that's happening, Jimmy and Sarah are trying to get everyone off. They're trying to evacuate everybody as fast as they can before this happens, because they know that once the Zerg show up, the Zerg take over, and when the Zerg take over, the Protoss show up and fucking nuke the planet.
Yes.
And that is just the pattern that it's followed. So anyone that's on this planet with the Zerg, terrifying. But anyone who happened to survive, won't for long. We need to get all of our people off. Unfortunately, the only way to get them off is for Sarah to stay behind. And now she says it's not permanent. I swear. She's the guy going like, oh, watch the hallway. She's Gandalf on the bridge.
Uh-huh.
And she doesn't intend to stay on that bridge. She intends to catch up with everybody. But unfortunately, she gets completely swarmed and dies. And this is like the early third of the first game, and you're like, she's a fucking main character. Unbeknownst to us, the Zerg need a leader. They're a hive mind. They realize, wait, we're about to assimilate this person into our hive mind. They are special. Something's been done to this human. There's a lot of things. So they change the way they assimilate her and basically assimilate into her.
Oh.
And she becomes the leader of the Zerg. Now, who does she have a reason to be mad at because of who just got her killed? And who? Sarah Kerrigan. So now a person who's mad at humans is now in charge of the most ferocious army in the galaxy that's only getting scarier. And now, like, the face of the Zerg is a human ghost that Jimmy Raynor recognizes.
Yeah.
And, like, blames himself for. And so no human, in theory, has ever been infested this way. Usually you get infested and you turn into a husk or a zombie that gets thrown and killed. You're not like a person anymore. This is the first time a person is still themselves, but is now basically a part of the hive mind.
Yeah.
So Jimmy's like at odds because he knows now what the humans are doing, and he knows why the Protoss are now going around nuking planets, and he's now kind of friends with and possibly even romantically linked with the leader of the Zerg army. So that's kind of the setting that happens in StarCraft 1. And then it resolves itself where Kerrigan doesn't, like, this ain't a heel turn. This is the new Kerrigan. She is the Queen of Blades. She is this fucked up, scary monster version of herself, and she's in charge of the Zerg, and that's just how it is. And then the game ends, and there are times where the Protoss are working with the humans, and then they don't realize that all humans aren't on the same page. So sometimes they're betrayed, and they don't know who to trust. There are times where Jimmy is trying to convince Sarah, who is now just considered Kerrigan, the Queen of Blades, the Queen of the Zerg, to like quit being vengeful, but like the new parts of the Zerg in her are emphasizing that stuff. So he's like trying to be on the same page with her, but she keeps giving him reasons not to. And so he can't. And then there are times where even she is trying to broach fake peace with the Protoss to turn against the human, because she's like, I'm going to use them again. So there's all this interconnected stuff in a world where like these were all disparate aliens. And then that's where it ends. And then 10 years pass, Connor. 10 years pass with just like, well, I guess that's just how things are. With the status quo between all of them, and who's good and who's bad and who gets along. So then fast forward to StarCraft II. StarCraft II's human campaign ends with Jimmy Raynor curing Sarah Kerrigan of the Zerg. Now, not fully. She has this fucked up like tendril hair, and she keeps that and like ties it back into ponytail, but she's a human again. And that is how the campaign ends. So they pick up right where they've left off and get right back into everyone getting along. And like the guy who was like pulling all the strings on the human has now essentially become like the space like dictator chancellor of the humans. And there's like splinter factions of humans that are not like, there's a civil war going on. Then that's also happened with the Protoss. There's good guy Protoss, bad guy Protoss. They are very much like, it's like religious in a weird way, where if you don't follow that, you're a heretic. So now the heretics have like gotten a couple people that are like not traditionally bad guys. So even the regular Protoss are like, well, that guy, I can't treat him like a heretic. Are the dark Protoss not as bad as I thought? What is going on? And like everything's all fucked up and everyone's infighting, and Kerrigan's just like, now I'm gonna go off and she didn't want to fight them. She wanted her revenge, and then she wanted to go off and be left alone. But then she gets dragged back into it because basically Jimmy is like, Kerrigan, I need your help. Mm-hmm. And psi emitters start happening again. So some of her Zerg are being pulled off and turned into like splinter broods. And so again, in a big long, not to just tell the story, but the end of that campaign is Jimmy curing Kerrigan, and then we had to wait like a year and a half for the next campaign, which was a Zerg campaign all about like who is Kerrigan in a world where she still has all of her abilities but isn't infected with the Zerg anymore. And even the Zerg are like, should we even listen to you?
Yeah.
And Kerrigan's like, yeah, should I? Who am I? And then decisions are made about whether or not she reintroduces certain parts of the Zerg back into her life, and what even is her identity. She's now been like the Queen of Blades almost as long as she was Sarah Kerrigan, that to her, she's like, well, who am I? Like, it's like the whole idea of like, if you found out you were adopted and then you met your real mom, they're way less your real mom than your adopted mom, but they're still your mom. So it's like, you have these two things that like, they both matter, but you have to decide what's important. So she's like, shit, I never thought I'd be Sarah Kerrigan again. I was the Queen of Blades. Who am I? Am I both? Am I neither? Like, who's actually me? And she's realizing like how much of my vengeance was me and how much of my vengeance was the Zerg making me that way. The Protoss are civil war fighting like crazy, and so the humans are trying to help them. So the humans are like the French helping the Americans during the like the early days of like the war with the British. And it's like, so all that stuff's happening, but then like they don't know who to trust, because the Protoss are like, well, we know those humans are bad, but like I guess we could team up with these humans. And Jimmy Raynor has his own group of guys, the Roughnecks, and it's so crazy. There's so much going on. There's so much story. It's good story. By the end of the third campaign, there's like Dragon Ball Z fights happening with like like old progenitor races of aliens, and then the Zerg assimilating that and creating a new thing that then is, and then like, what is the direction of the universe, and why are we fighting, and does the Zerg even have to be bad, or have they just been bad because of who's been controlling them? And then suddenly the Zergs are like the good guys, and like it's just like tons of changes and swerves and who do you trust and who do you don't trust and tons of replayability. It's a fantastic, like, there could not have been a better follow-up to StarCraft and Brood War than the StarCraft II and its 2 expansions. They were everything you want them to be, both gameplay-wise and story-wise. There are books that take place with those characters because new characters are introduced from Jimmy's past, and then just new people. One of the captains ends up getting infested by the Zerg, but then something similar to him happens that happened to Kerrigan, but he's not in charge. But then he breaks free, so now he's like, I'm cut off from everyone, but I'm still some fucked up Zerg guy. So he approaches Jimmy, and Jimmy's like, oh no, it's a Zerg guy. And he's like, no, I'm actually not. And he's like, what the fuck are you? And then the Zerg don't know what he is. And so he's like, and you're like, well, can I trust him? Whose side is he actually on? And like, there's so much stuff. There's so much stuff, Connor, but it's really, really, really good. Lots of memorable characters, lots of fun gameplay twists. Like I said, there's tons of customization as you play through because each campaign, like I said, how the first one does the whole, like, every Terran unit, you get to decide, like, what kind of unit are you? Well, in the Zerg campaign, they then go, okay, well, now it's all about evolution. So now what you're doing is you're essentially RPG upgrading Sarah throughout the game, and she gets new abilities and new stuff. And you're choosing the direction that the Zerg horde, like, evolves in. So there are units you might not even see. There are units you can double down on. Sometimes they get a different ability. Sometimes you just get an ability you would have never seen. Sometimes you get a unit you never would have seen. Then in the Protoss thing, they even jump further on that, where you have this energy bar where you can control time, and you've got this like pseudo like magic bar of like, oh, well, right off the bat, I want to, instead of having to collect minerals for this thing, I'll just use my magic bar to create one right off the bat, which changes this, and I can speed up this and how fast it goes. And so each one has its own fun little like take on the meta outside game that's not the campaign. So it's almost like it's got the, again, super Mass Effect 3 structure as far as his missions, or Mass Effect 2 or 3, and that just keeps continuing. Connor, it's so good. There's all this great stuff. Dude. If you like anything sci-fi related, and it's very fun. It's an adventurous thing. It's not a grim, like Diablo is grim. Diablo is always like, bad things are happening and people are dying, and if you meet a character that's great, they'll probably explode, and it sounds and if that guy's your friend, his head's getting cut off, and like that's just how it is. Warhammer, very similar. Again, people have levied comparisons to Warhammer, and it's very grim and dour and bleak, and StarCraft isn't that. It is very much like a fun, adventurous, but like compelling and grounded version of a sci-fi future, in a way that, again, the books are a great example of that, because if this world wasn't that good, you couldn't write all these books, right?
Yeah.
Like if the universe of Star Wars couldn't support this fiction, then there wouldn't be a billion books, and StarCraft can support this fiction.
Yeah.
And again, all the different factions, so the way you follow them. And again, even the sequel follow-up to StarCraft II that was a book about what the world looks like after all that happened was so smart. It was written by Timothy Zahn, actually. So he was a guy that wrote a bunch of Star Wars books back in the day. He's a sci-fi legend. It's really, really clever and fun. And StarCraft rules, Connor. StarCraft's so good.
Dude, I feel like, Mike, you are just like, if I don't say all of this in a stream right now, Connor's never gonna let me say it.
I'll never get a chance for all of this to come out. So had you just like,
yes,
yeah, there you go, Connor. And by the way, you mentioned it yourself, the Wings of Liberty, like, base version of StarCraft, it's free to play.
Yeah.
You can just go get Battle.net and just download it right now and just play that. And it's a really, really good example of what that campaign, like, what a campaign can be in a game that's not traditionally, like, structured this way. You could just go download it, Connor. Just go download it right now. And because I know you like Mass Effect stuff, and that's all of the non-real-time strategy stuff. And it does a good job of spoon-feeding you on how to play a RTS, so you can kind of, like, jump in. Connor, I know that you love playing games like 10 years after they come out.
That's my thing.
It's 2025, and this game came out in 2012.
It's been longer now since since StarCraft II came out than it was when 2 came out versus the first game.
Yes. So I think what you should do is I know you do a lot of things, and you get to games when you can, but you should at least put that on your list of something to try.
Yes.
Because I think you would like it. I think you would enjoy it, especially because I know how you've appreciated the Mass Effect stuff.
Yeah.
And the world building and storytelling and thought that goes into these races and their cultures and their structures and stuff is very similar in a way that I think you would appreciate.
Yeah. It sounds like I've got a couple things I'm going to ask you and finally get into more of the context from your life when you really first experienced this game.
Oh, yeah. You asked me about my life. And
no,
this was my answer, right?
We talk about the game. No. We talk. Well, I guess you did spin it that way, but we'll get to it. I'm not worried about it.
I'm a tangent hound. I'm always going off on tangents.
Dude, and this is Tangent the podcast, so it's perfect. I was going to say that it sounds like having such a rich, compelling world and narrative really serves the real-time strategy nature, and probably it's the way you're talking about it makes it seem like it has to give that gameplay weight.
Yes.
Even if it's not your bag, it
100%.
does.
Because you're thinking of it from a narrative standpoint. So again, if the Zerg are this awful race of essentially monsters, and then you're in a mission where Kerrigan's I can't get rid of these Protoss without you, Jimmy. I will not kill your humans. Let's do it. And then the mission involves so Zerg have this thing that they spread on the ground called creep. In the game, mechanically, you can't build buildings unless they're on creep. And your units move faster on creep, so there's strategy to build it. In your head, normally when you're playing, you're like, oh, shit, I found creep. Zerg are nearby. I need to, that's where they're coming from. I need to be worried. But then there are missions where you're working with them, and you're like, oh, wait, creep's good.
Yeah, that's so funny.
I'm not afraid of that. Or when Mutalisks, they're flying units that ricochet shots off of guys. When they're flying around, you're like, fuck, they're coming into my mineral line. They're going to take out my guys. When they're flying around in missions where they're protecting you, you're like, oh, weird. I'm happy that Mutalisk is around. That's weird. You're a very famous thing in StarCraft is the Zerg rush, because Zerg can create a unit called the Zergling faster than almost any other unit. So early on in StarCraft, the scary thing was you're not even making your first unit yet, and 6 Zerglings have just run into your base and they're killing everything, and you're like, oh, well, I guess, okay, GG, it's over.
Yeah.
My game's over. Oh, congratulations. And that was a common thing, was the Zerg rush. And so you're meant, you're bred from being born to be afraid of Zerglings coming in your base, especially early on. So when that stuff is being subverted,
yes,
it's always very, very weird. Or when you're suddenly playing as that thing, and you're like, oh, now I'm the thing that in the last campaign I was afraid of. It really holds weight. Or how different all of the races mechanically play also is influenced in how different all of them all are culturally in the lore. And that reiterates that by going oh, the way when I'm playing the Protoss, it's so different than playing the humans, because their technology and the way that they work just as a species is so different that mechanically, of course, they don't work anything like it. The Zerg, their building units, a creature that collects things goes and literally turns into a building.
Wow.
It mutates from being a creature into being a building that then creates creatures. Humans have robots that collect stuff for them and then people in mining suits that build stuff. It takes time to build. The Protoss have these crystals that allow them to teleport energy from anywhere. So anywhere there's a crystal, they can just warp a building in. And it just shows up immediately. And so those are 3 entirely different approaches to even just building your buildings.
Yeah.
And so it just goes oh, even if I didn't know there was lore, I could kind of headcanon myself into how different these creatures are just by how they build buildings and the type of units. The Protoss are all about honor, and so their main units are these guys with blades. They don't have guns. They just march in and they've got shields, and they're just it's glory for them to die. And another unit is when you've died, you don't actually die. You kind of like Star Wars ghost yourself into this spirit stream, and then they put that spirit in a different unit, and then you become that unit. So it's like becoming that unit is proud because that means I died a hero worthy of being placed in that thing. And they're all about like honor, and they can read each other's minds, so there's no lying. They don't lie to each other. So when humans lie to them, they're like, what?
I mean, this...
Why'd you betray us? That doesn't exist.
All of this, too, it really makes it seem like they're so... It's kind of when you can really tell that there is care and such deep intentionality put into a certain type of game, whether it be like, I can't put my finger on why this is working for me, but it is. And the more that you dive into that or immerse yourself in the world, the more that becomes rewarding. Too.
Yes.
It seems like this is doing a lot of that, to where surface level, it's an incredible game, and the distinction between gameplay options is so cool and fascinating. But then when that
purely
is all
design, it's just design choices.
Yes, and then when that's all weaved in with, as you're saying, the world building and why certain races do certain things, it just only builds it up to be something more fantastic.
Yeah, it's really smart because it is that perfect marriage of like mechanics and lore in the way that like it's like the difference between like I'm making a fighting game, I create a character from scratch, or I'm making a fighting game, I'm taking this guest character. How should they function? What things from my game should they be able to do in this way? Like what's interesting? This game basically does that, but with their own lore, because they're like, okay, well, if I'm making a game where like you gather resources, create buildings, and make units, how would this hive mind do that? If they assimilate things, what would be important to them? What would be like what's valuable? Oh, this is my baby cat, by the way. This is Arwen. This is Arwen. She's a princess. She's an elven princess. What would be important to them? What would they value? How would they do it? And so you look at humans and go like, well, they've spread through the galaxy. They're industrious. They build stuff. They have lots of robots. Their whole thing is literally when people talk about playing Terrans, it's like, oh, do you play bio or mech? Because all of their units are either tanks and machines and robots or humans in suits with guns. And so it is very built around like those two things. With the Zerg, they're all about showing up, basically covering your planet in this junk, absorbing you, becoming better for it, and then leaving. So they're the Zerg swarm. They are all about like when you play the game, you're always afraid that like in the time it takes me to make 3 guys, I know they can make 10 guys. In the time it takes for me to make my guys, I know that they're going to have a wave of fodder guys that like, yeah, if they get up close, they'll fuck you up, but they're not even meant to fight me. They're meant to get killed by me so that the scarier things behind them can get close enough to kill me. And that's like mechanics, but I'm also describing like, oh, this is how this like animalistic monster that absorbs things would work. And then you look at the Protoss, this like futuristic, like glory bound people, like their first unit is a melee character that wades in like, and he's tough as nails, and they reflect that with the mechanics. And the way that they build things is they're not building things, they're warping in things from other places to serve the purpose there until they warp out. That they don't train units or turn units from goo into a monster. They literally go like, oh, these guys are all somewhere in the galaxy and we're warping them in to fight this fight for us. And sometimes, since Protoss are pure consciousness and they can exist without their bodies and they're psionic, sometimes there are mechanics where you take a unit and another unit and combine them, and those 2 units are gone and they become a new, different unit. And that's the only way to make that unit. Same with the Zerg. Some Zerg units you only get by making a bunch of one unit, getting to a certain point in your tech tree, and then evolving them into another one. Where humans, it's all just about like, can this building build this thing? But I don't need to build this building 4 hydralisks and then turn those hydralisks into into lurkers, or turn these zerglings into banelings, or turn like any of this stuff into another thing where human buildings have like interchangeable parts where you can pick up a building and they float through the air and then swap and connect to something that they built. So they're all interchangeable in the same way that human technology happens to be that way. It's very, very clever, the marriage of lore and mechanics.
Yes.
And it takes a lot of care to make that work.
It really does. Before I never do it, I'm going to force you to talk about your life here. Here's where I want to start, Mike. I want to dive into, focus on the context a little bit of your life that we can remember, whether it's broad or specific, that we want to get into before we put a bow on StarCraft II for you. And first things first is, I want you to do an exercise for me called scene painting. Can you scene paint the room where you would have been playing StarCraft II and what that looked like?
Oddly enough, so at the time, I had a really, really nice laptop. So my dad's a scumbag. My dad's a big scumbag loser weirdo.
Was it on your first episode we talked about this?
Oh no, am I a
'Cause I'm
stereotype
aware
that
of
I bring?
this. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And he, at the time, was trying to basically buy my affection.
Yes.
And so he bought me for Christmas like a nutso ass Vio like Sony laptop, like stupid crazy. It was probably overpriced, but it could do anything, play anything. It was a nuts laptop at the time. And historically, once computers started becoming very, very expensive, I kind of stopped playing games on computers because it just was, they got more complicated and more expensive and it became difficult. It was just easier to do stuff on consoles. That's why I like my Steam Deck. It kind of bridges the best of both worlds.
Okay.
But I had a sick ass Vio laptop, and so often what I would do is I'd go to my buddy Chad's house either after work or on weekends, and we would watch wrestling or watch like shows that we both watch but watch them together. And then when those shows are over, we're just at each other's house. We'd like have like something on the barbecue or the slow cooker. It was basically like a cookout hangout every weekend.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and when the core thing was done, we just sort of like hang out in the same room. I know it sounds dumb, but it's kind of like the way I would imagine boyfriends and girlfriends hang out, where they don't necessarily need a plan. It's just kind of like, oh, we're just hanging out in the same room together.
Yeah.
Like that's what we do. And so often I would be on his couch with my laptop playing StarCraft while he like caught up on anime that he was watching that I was like wasn't super interested in, but I'm like there. So I'm playing StarCraft, he's watching anime, we're talking and joking along, just sitting in his living room. That is more often than not probably the version I exist at least when I'm playing Wings of Liberty, the initial launch of StarCraft II.
I love that. Can you sort of describe his like living room or wherever you were watching?
Yes, so he had like one of those like big couches that like goes in like a boomerang shape.
Oh yeah.
And then has like the built-in like fold up, and then it's got like a big old like thing and cup holders, and it's like big cushy, but then it also has the built-in recliners in 3 of the chairs, so we'd always sit in the recliners, and we would have the big thing flipped up in the middle where we could put our plates, because like I said, we were all about like cooking and slow cooking stuff, and then like just turn it into like, what did we make this weekend? So we'd have our food in between us, and I'd have my laptop on my laptop, and then he had a big ass like entertainment center that he got from his dad when he moved into this house. And at that time he had just bought a new TV, but it's like the biggest TV I'd ever been around in person. It was like 75 inches. And so we're like, it rocked. So we're sitting in there with like kitchen behind us, slow cooker making the best thing we've ever eaten, food next to us in the most comfortable chair that flips out into a recliner, watching and playing games, hanging out. Again, it's Vegas, so like we've got like the screen door open because it's summer and it's a little warm outside. Occasionally we take breaks and we'd go out. Here's how cool we were. We were trying to learn how to ride ripsticks because like I like skateboarding, and I was always like, I want to learn how to ride a ripstick. It feels like it reminds me of surfing. I want to learn how to do it. So sometimes we take breaks and go out front and learn how to ride ripsticks. That's what I was doing when I was playing StarCraft II, Connor. I was basically the coolest guy in the world.
Sounds like it. Every time I think of a ripstick, I'm like, which of my ankles is going to break? I could never master it.
They're weird, but Connor, I got there, and I love a ripstick. I own 2. I'm looking at a ripstick. I have something called a Rip Surf. It's made by the Ripstick people. It's a surfboard, and it's like it still rotates the same way, but it's literally the shape and visuals of a surfboard, and it's I love it. I love it.
And do you take it in the water?
No. You still ride it on like the ground like normal.
But it's just
yeah, it's just a surfboard. But it's a bad means of transportation, but it's a fun means of recreationally riding around.
That's absolutely hilarious. I had no sense that we'd be talking about ripsticks on this podcast today.
Yeah, so that's the room. That's the room I was in.
And that's getting
it was great. It was glorious.
I love that. I mean, I'm thinking of my friend who you've met on at least a couple shows, Eddie Martin, who we used to like when we were younger, especially growing up in the same town. We would just have days and weekends like that where we spent all our time together doing that. Once one person's watching something, one person's playing something. He's on his computer, I'm on his Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
We got mac and cheese for lunch
for
whatever reason.
And then this is me when I'm in my late 20s. So
yes.
Imagine getting to live that childhood life in your late 20s.
That's awesome. Do you remember, like, outside of, are there other contextual things from your life that you remember? Whether, like, I was working here, or this was a common thread for you at the time?
I mean, I know I was actually working with Jake when we were working at that door installation company. So another big part of it was that, like, when I wasn't at Chad's playing, I would be playing online multiplayer with Jake, and then I'd be at work with Jake all day, and we'd just be talking about StarCraft. So there was a whole lot of like, how far are you? Have you gotten in the campaign? What units are you like? And like, here's the thing. Here's my idea. What I'm going to do is build this, at this. Then at that timing, I'll do this. And then we were just talking about the strats and the stuff. There was this cool thing I had alluded to, the Protoss unit. If two certain units combined, they become a unit called an Archon.
Okay.
It is literally the melding of two psyches into one. And StarCraft ended up releasing a multiplayer mode called Archon mode. And Archon mode is, what if it was the same? It wasn't two people playing two teams as a team. It was, what if you just have your thing, but two people are in there able to operate anything?
Whoa.
So sometimes that means you get in each other's way, but sometimes that means, I can control these guys to swoop in at the perfect time after you start that instead of me having to try to double it. Or you can control attacking him while I make sure our base is protected. Or I can handle building and upgrading while you handle looking for new. Like, you can do all this different stuff because two people are controlling it, which is a really, really clever mode. So we did some of that. Great name for it too. The perfect name for it is Archon mode because it's two people coming together to control one thing. So we did a lot of that. So it really was like, when that game came out, it kind of took over my life for about a year or so. Because it was like, I was playing it when I was with anyone. I was thinking about it when I wasn't playing it. I was talking about it to Jake when neither of us were playing it. We were thinking about playing it when we weren't playing it. So,
do you have any specific memories of either moments when you were playing this game, or like a moment, or like a memory from this time in your life that comes up? So it could be game or contextual.
So I remember it was one of the times where I was at Chad's, but I was playing multiplayer on the Wi-Fi with Jake. And we had been planning a strategy where we're like, because he plays Protoss, and I, at the time, was jumping between Terran and Zerg, just because Zerg was way different in 2 than it was in StarCraft 1, but I was still playing a lot of Zerg. So we were like coming up with strategies that worked between both of us. Like,
and are you chatting like in a chat? Or are you on the phone?
Yeah, so this is modern BattleNet, so there is like essentially a party system.
Okay.
So we're talking to each other probably in a headset on our respective PCs. And we had been talking at work for a long time, like, okay, so what works really well with the Zerg and the Protoss? What is a great strategy? What if one of us just like protected the other so that they didn't have to do anything, and they get real greedy about their build so that they come back late game, so that basically by the time, like, there really is just 2 against 1, but then I'm building it up so big that by late game you're not gone, and they have to deal with me, and they weren't prepared for me. So then you have the secret base over there and we had all these strategies, and so we tried it, and it worked. It was perfect. It was insane how well executed it was the first time we did it, and then it never worked again. Never in a million years. We don't even understand how it worked the first time.
Yes. Because
it worked so effortlessly and so flawlessly, and we felt like lords. We were lords of our domain, coming up with tacticians tactical plans that no tactician in history
Yes.
could have ever even imagined. We're more than men. We're titans. We're titans of our species, coming up with profound works of art that are expressing themselves through this game of StarCraft. And then we tried to do those things, and they never worked again, and we got annihilated and destroyed and embarrassed over and over and over and over until we fell so far out of the rank league we were in that we didn't even want to touch the game.
That story too of that one amazing time, and even if you were to tell people about it, really sounds like this is my girlfriend from camp, but she lives in another city sort of thing. It's almost like
no one would believe us. They'd look at our record and be like, I don't buy that for a second, and we'd be like, no guys, it was fucking crazy, because like I was building carriers and tempests, and they didn't know that they were too busy worried about Mike. Mike had his Zerg, like he had pushed the creep all the way up in there to play. He had taken like 6 bases. They were operating, they were turtling up hard, and they're like, yeah, shut up. You're just like saying words to try to sound like you know what you're talking about.
That is so funny. I'm so glad I asked that now.
Yeah, that was fun. I love that it only worked exactly one time.
Yeah.
Because we were so fucking cocky. We were like, bro, and I was like talking to him like, Chad, it's done. The thing me and Jake came up with, the world ain't ready for Mike and Jake. They have no clue what they're about to deal with. And then it was just like lost, over and over forever. And Chad's like, yeah, I'm not hearing you guys. You guys don't seem too thrilled with what's going on. I'm like, yeah, shut up.
Yeah, never mind.
Yeah, sorry, I'm bad.
Mike, this has been so great hearing from you about this game. Before we go to the post-show segments and wrap up, can you put a bow on the place that StarCraft II held for you?
It's one of those things where it was like a memory. Like, you know when like maybe you ate something a lot as a kid and then you're like, wait a second, I'm an adult. I can just eat that. Why don't I go like, I remember loving that thing, or like, I watched
for sure.
a show as a kid, or I mean, obviously with games it's easy, but like there are all sorts of things that like at some point in time in your life that was important to you, and it's just like, I'm glad that was important to me, and I hope that it doesn't suck. And StarCraft is one of those things where like I basically got that twice, because rather than making me go back and revisit the thing I used to love, they basically just said, here's that again, but now. And now, in an even longer amount of time, you'll be talking about this thing. And so you don't even need the nostalgia of the original. You still get it, but now we're giving you a new nostalgia. So it's like, it's really beautiful that I got to love a thing, and then I got to kind of like re-love that thing again. I guess it's like Eternal Sunshine on the Spotless Mind if it didn't have a bleak ending.
Yeah.
Because you know how their ending is basically like, we're just going to keep falling in love and ruining each other's lives.
Yeah.
What if instead it was, no matter how many times our memories erased, we'll always fall in love and make each other's lives better?
Yes.
I got that. I got the good version of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, but with StarCraft.
Yes, you are Kate Winslet, Jim Carrey as StarCraft.
Yes, 100%.
Mike, dude, we got a couple things to do, but thanks for bringing this game on. That was awesome to hear from you.
Thank you for letting me rattle on endlessly and with very little direction about StarCraft 2 and how much I love it. I cannot stress enough that people should give it a shot. The main game is free, but also, if you're like, real-time strategy games aren't for me, reach out and find the books. If you're a person that's just like looking for books, I know that there are millions of people that are like, I've got an Audible account, or I'm always looking for new sci-fi, or blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
Just like, there is no shortage of StarCraft books, and very rarely do they just flat out assume you're already a fan of the universe. A lot of them, especially if you like look up the arcs that they're in, you could kind of jump in blind and sort of just treat the world like the world and divorce it from the game. And I bet you there'd be a lot of people that would really be fans of that. And there's no shortage of those books.
Okay, I love it. Evangelizing to the very end. There we go. Well, to close things out, I'll, of course, lead us into our post-show segments, the first of which is the Fact Me by Your Game segment, Mike, where
I love it.
where I'm going to just share a fun fact with you the guest, about the game you brought on today. This is more for me and maybe the listener out there who has less context for StarCraft II. This came from, well, I learned about this from a YouTube video called The History of StarCraft by Arcadology. It's a great video. It's got about 8,000 views. Was, I think, very informative, especially as essentially a complete noob. But this fact I have is called You're Welcome, Twitch. Now, Mike, fair to assume you're aware of StarCraft II's influence on the rise of Twitch?
Oh, very, very much so. Again, just the competitive video gaming in general, it was a big part of that.
Yes. So I'm pulling this fact from this video. Again, there'll be a link in the show notes in the episode citation, but StarCraft II's esports popularity was an instrumental factor in the early success of Twitch.tv, back then known as Justin TV. While the original was released before a time where live streaming was even feasible for a gamer, its sequel was released at the beginning of the trend. Mike Morhaime, co-founder of Blizzard, is quoted as saying that he wishes StarCraft II would have been released earlier to capitalize on the momentum of the original, but that a silver lining of its later release was that the game's place in history of not just esports, but also in that of Twitch's early success. This was a factor in the ongoing shift of what it meant to be a professional gamer at the time, where previously there was a couple of reliable ways that you could make money as a gamer back then, which was like tournament winnings or being on a sponsored team. And the rise of Twitch and people watching StarCraft II players on Twitch sort of really helped birth this new avenue. And then now, of course, we live in a reality, Mike, where people's whole jobs are Twitch. And from playing all sorts of games, or just chatting, or just being like a sexy person on a camera. So
a sexy person who doesn't even know what a video game is.
There you go. So anyway, I know as I asked, you were aware of this, but that was just interesting context for me. I had no clue that it was so instrumental.
Well, it's because in the original StarCraft, a big thing was trading replays, because the way it tracks what you do is it basically just tracks what you do, and then kind of saves that as like data that someone else can download, and then it just like launches the game and then does that. So you're not actually watching a replay, you're almost watching like an algorithmically replayed version of the game. And that was very, very common, and it was like super, because of that, the information you're sharing is like minimal, because you're basically just giving like
an idea of what happened.
Yes, you're telling the other person's game what happened in this match, so then it can show that person, which back in the day, the internet sizes of files are a big deal. Like internet speeds aren't super fast. So the idea that I could share a replay of my match that effortlessly was a big thing. So sharing replays was a huge part of tournaments back in the day, especially the few online tournaments you've had, where usually what someone would do was take the replay and commentate over it later and then upload it somewhere for someone to download, where that was already a scene. It just didn't have a tool behind it to make it easy, where here comes Justin.tv and Twitch, and people are already used to the idea of watching these things this way with these overlays. The idea of commentating over matches was already a thing in people's heads, and suddenly they can do it live. And so like they accidentally had all they needed. And so it's no surprise that it became such an important part of like a growing thing. And also like this might seem, it feels obvious to me, but most people might not realize that like the term GG, like good game, that's StarCraft.
Bonkers.
Like not that
I'm learning that
never
now.
existed, but like that is where like it was popularized. The idea of saying I'm playing a game and I lost or I won or the game's over, GG, that is StarCraft. Without StarCraft, good chance that does not become the thing it becomes, because that is the equivalent of the boxers banging gloves at the beginning of the match, or the teams walking and shaking hands after a game. Like that is what GG is. GG means I concede next game. GG exists because of StarCraft. Like that, and you don't have that become so popular if not because of what it means to watching games and sportsmanship or like mattering and like the way a vocabulary builds up around a scene and stuff like that that goes hand in hand with Twitch becoming popular and StarCraft being such a popular thing to watch both online and if you live in Korea, like on TV.
I should have expected, Mike. I'm bringing a fun fact, and you're bringing 3, baby. I'm
sorry.
No,
this is
thank
why
you.
Jessica thinks I'm a try-hard know-it-all.
Jessica.
Connor.
Well, this is, truly, it's the kind of flourish you give. I'll repeat one more time for the listener, The History of StarCraft by Arcadology. There's a link in the show notes to that video. Lastly, Mike, we're here in the final segment, the game recommendations, where I'm going to treat, it's my one tie into the movie, Call Me By Your Name, as I always say, and I'm treating StarCraft II as your passionate summer fling in Italy, where, unfortunately, like the movie, things are not going to work out. So in order to help you get over the heartbreak of losing StarCraft II and moving on, I have 3 new potential flings for you that all have a little something in common with this game. But the big question is, Mike, are you ready to get back out there?
I don't know if I am, but I'm willing to try.
And that's all I need. Just a little try. So, Mike, I've got 3 for you today. Here's the first one. Is if what you love about this game is you're just a Blizzard head. And it sounds like you've played, every Blizzard game ever made. So if that's really all you care about and you want another Blizzard throwback from even a far more distant past, I'll recommend, I bet you love this game, The Lost Vikings.
Lost Vikings is a very good game. Especially if you have a multi-tap and you're playing on the Super Nintendo. Are you kidding me?
3 people?
Yeah.
Gosh. So that's your first recommendation, The Lost Vikings. Is if, Mike, what you really want is another all-time great RTS game, you actually name-dropped this earlier, and it's probably not the one you're thinking, Total Annihilation.
Total Annihilation, great choice, Connor. RTS forgotten to time, I feel like. It is very, very good. It's very different, but you could see the influence of it trying to not be Age of Empires, but also the hero-centric world that real-time strategy games became after Warcraft 3 kind of started in Total Annihilation. That is a game that I think lots of people, if you're an RTS guy and you've never touched it, you're going to be like, what the fuck? Is this where has this been all my life?
Yeah.
Total Annihilation's awesome. Great choice, Connor.
Thank you. Well, as I'm looking up a list of greatest RTS games of all time, I was reminded that I did an episode with friend of the show, Lauren Griggs, on this game. I don't know. I think it was early 2024, so it's been discussed here, but it was a great excuse to bring it back. Your last recommendation is, Mike, if all you really give a shit is that this is you want another massively popular game on Twitch, and this actually has an added bonus. It's got the word craft in it. We're talking Minecraft, Mike.
I love the direction you go with these recommendations because how you say you never know how I'm going to feel about a game or not?
Yes.
I can never predict. It's like, will it be wordplay?
Yeah.
Will it be a rhyming scheme? Will it be the box art reminds him of it?
Sure, yes.
You never know which angle it's coming from, but I'm always like, but it always gets me.
Truly, what's the last silly one I'm going to do? Well, I'm glad you appreciate that, Mike, because I have fun doing that every week. So I'll just go ahead and recap these. We've got The Lost Vikings, we've got Total Annihilation, and we got Minecraft. That'll wrap up that segment. And somehow, Mike, it's actually going to bring us to the end of the show. So before we go, I have 2 things to say. One is that thanks as always for talking video games with me. I always have a blast doing it, buddy. And I'm so excited we have 2 upcoming co-op episodes to do as we're going to discuss some indie games. But lastly, Mike, I'm going to say one phrase, and I think you're going to know what it means. It's a new lap record. You just set the record.
I'm sorry.
Mike,
I'm sorry, Connor. That wasn't my intention,
Mike,
I swear.
No apologies necessary. It's only appropriate that it was you to break your own record. We're sitting now at 2 hours. Well, it'll probably, who knows what it's going to look like after Jeremy edits it down and takes out the break. Maybe I'm speaking too soon. I may have spoken too soon.
So instead of new lap record, he's heating up. He's on fire.
Exactly.
I might be about to tomahawk dunk something, but we're not sure yet. I'm simply on fire.
So between, the opening and ending music and the ad for our Mass Effect Games Club, which is currently airing on our free feed, maybe it'll be there. We'll see. But on our way out, buddy, you plugged, your con and Jim and them earlier. Do you want to plug those again? Where can people find you on the internet?
Well, I want to plug my other con, Connor McCabe.
Hey.
My favorite con. I mean this, Connor. I love you to death. I love talking to you. I like the approach you bring to getting to talk about games. It's a very easy. I'm sure there are people out there that don't want to talk as much as I do, but you kind of like pull out the wanting to talk about something from them in such an expert way. People don't realize that interviewing someone or getting someone to talk about something is not easy. I've had to do it on my show proper, and I'm with someone on that show who's very good at interviewing, and so I'm always hyper aware of like the difference between talking to someone and interviewing them, the difference between someone who is having a conversation and someone that can draw a good conversation out. And you were so good at that, Connor.
Thanks, buddy.
So I cannot stress enough how impressed I always am, but how much fun I always have that you give me an outlet to talk about games I love, but also talk about games I love to you. So that's my big plug is you, my favorite con. But also check out levelupexpo.com. Check out Jim and Them on YouTube. When Lego Party comes out, and when what was the other game called that I worked on?
What was it, like Reincarnation
Guardian of the
Monsters?
Beast or something?
Beast of Reincarnation.
Yeah, I worked on those games. My name won't be in the credits. That's how video games work. But they're both cool games. That's what I got to plug.
Killer. Well, thank you. The words are so kind, Mike. I really appreciate it, and I'll echo that back to you in my enjoyment of just getting to chat with you about games. What an unlikely but lovely friendship we've built.
It's crazy. I can't wait to go to Disneyland with you,
dude.
Connor.
We're gonna make it happen. It's gonna be great, and we're gonna. I don't know. Sometime we'll get the two of, and then we'll do that, and then we'll also get the two of us together with Jake, and then someday we'll get the three of us together with Kristen, and it's gonna. My heart's really gonna explode. But, Mike,
which sucks because now we all live in different cities.
I know. Now we got somebody. Yeah. So, someday though.
It'll happen.
It will.
Ooh, we could all be in a polyamorous relationship with each other.
Yay, I'm sure Jake's wife will love that.
She's a part of it. Welcome home, Dana. I'm your husband now. So is Connor.
She's like, I always knew this would happen, Mike. Well, to close us out, I'll just spit out a few plugs of my own. The cover art for Call Me By Your Game is done by Glenn J. You can find him and his great work on his Instagram, again, in the link in the show notes. This show is produced, edited, and the original music is done by Jeremy Schmidt. You can thank him by listening to his podcast, Video Games, a Comedy Show, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow the show on Blue Sky, YouTube, and Instagram. There's links to our social medias. Please give us a follow there, especially on YouTube, where you can catch a full video version of every episode, unless I forget to record the Zoom or something crazy happens. But we've been doing that for almost 2 years now. So if you want to see me and Mike on camera as opposed to just our voices, head over to YouTube, search the podcast, subscribe. That'd be great. We're over 100 followers recently. That was a big milestone for us. So
fantastic.
Thank you.
I always forget that the video of these will ever see the light of day,
yes.
And I'm glad I'm sure I was biting my nails a bunch. I always forget. Hopefully I didn't do anything too embarrassing.
I guess we'll see as I scroll through 2 hours and 45 minutes of the footage. We'll have to see what it is. So follow us there. You can also follow me all over social media on Blue Sky and Instagram. My Twitch account's in there, even though I haven't been really streaming much lately. And then lastly is our network, Super NPC Radio. You can also follow our socials. But I would say, too, if you like this podcast and the things I talk, the conversations that I have about video games, and you want a way to support us, but also to get a little something in return, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/supernpcradio. It's where we have a bunch of bonus video game podcasts. We've been doing this for almost 5 years, so there are, I don't know, almost 1,000 bonus episodes over there. It's probably closer to like 700 something, but we have a ton of bonus stuff. The co-op series, which Mike has been on a bunch, he's going to be on soon. You can get those exclusively on there in audio format. They also go to YouTube as well, so if you want to preview that, you can see it. But again, our games club is our big ticket item, where I sit down with a group of friends and we go through a game chapter by chapter and discuss our experience with it. We just wrapped up our Resident Evil 4 remake series. It was a blast. And coming up soon, we are covering Death Stranding 2 on the beach as it airs. But if you're like, hey, Connor, I either want to support you, but I can't, or I don't know if I'm going to like the series. Will I like it? Check out our free feed, the Super NPC Games Club feed, wherever you get your podcasts. Currently, Mike and I brought up Mass Effect a bunch on this podcast. That series is airing right now. There's already 4 episodes out, so check it out there. That's enough plugs. There's links for all that crap in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Call Me By Your Game. Here's to 250 more.